Welcome to the NTN broadcast from live sitting of the broadcast from the House of Parliament in downtown Castries for today, the 30th day of May. And today, of course, we are bringing you live coverage from the House of Assembly. And of course, today we will be looking at the motions by the Prime Minister. There are lots, of course, as usual, the statement by the ministers, papers to be laid, and of course, what is the most important is a resolution by the Minister, Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, Economic Development, the Youth Economy, Justice and National Security, and it is for the borrowing of $32,100,000 for financing the 2023-24 budget, and the amount of $433,500,000 for refinancing existing debts. This is the major discussion that will be held in the House of Parliament today. And also there will also be another bill by the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Development and Youth Economy. It's actually the first reading, the United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Financing Amendment and Proceeds of Crime Amendment. But ahead of the Parliament sitting today, we are going to be discussing, paying tribute to our colleague, Mr. Winston Springer, who passed sometime last week. And so I have the pleasure of joining with me Mr. Earl Busquet, a veteran journalist. I don't want to use the word par excellence, but Earl has been around for a very, very long time, and Earl is joining me today in paying tribute to Mr. Winston Springer, who has been co-hosting with me for a long time. And Earl, I can tell you, it's not easy. It's filling in his shoes or sitting in here without his company. I'm telling you, it's not easy at all. So thank you for coming, and perhaps you can let me welcome you to the broadcast.
Thank you. It's been a very long time. I think the last time I was in this honorable house was in the last century. The last quarter of the last century.
That's a long time. All right.
But it's good to be here, and although the reason why I'm here is not one that I would that I am at all glad about, but it is one that none of us, including Winston, would have control over, because while today is always ours, tomorrow isn't.
Yes.
And we wake up on mornings thanking God for waking up. Thank Him for allowing us to have the day and go to bed and hope to wake up. And if we do, we continue the cycle. Then when that time comes, we never know. So like I wrote about Winston, he, like all of us, is in the in-transit lounge.
Yes, I read
transit
that.
Lounge,
yes.
Only waiting for the call with our boarding pass for the departure lounge.
I read that. I find that analogy very interesting.
And but Winston, we are here to remember Winston in his fullness. Not just Winston, the colleague, Winston, the fellow human being, the professional, the journalist, the father, the brother, the Winston Springer that we knew. And I often say to friends that after his son followed his dad's footsteps and started at HTS. I remember one time referring to...
Okay, but maybe I have an order here. Maybe we can start from his boy days. Let's see how well you knew him as early as his boy days. I know you're a Castries boy.
Yes, I'm a Castries boy.
But you're a full Asher boy.
Yeah, I'm a full Asher boy.
And he's CDC.
And we all went to college. Myself, Dennis, Cletus, and Winston. All of us in different classes. Some of us were scouts, some of us were not. Back in those days, everybody was a college boy and a friend, and we didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But the Springers always stood out among those who not were just CDC boys, but their upbringing was one that lent to a certain level of civil behavior that was not resident in all of us. For example, you'd have their knowledge of affairs would be a little higher. And I would eventually find out later that it had to do with their upbringing. They rose in a house like with George Odlum, where their mother and father were quite different. Not only was one loud and one quiet, but they supported different parties, but coexisted in the same home. And that was a model family, where the parents, took their own positions, but did not impose it on their children.
Yeah, and this is very rare now. Where you can find parents of different supporting different parties or whatever, and yet still they would manage to coexist in. And I do know one in the Fuaso area. We have Dr. Virginia Albert Poyer, the Minister for the Public Service and Member of Parliament for Babuno. We are doing a broadcast for Winston. Do you care to share anything, Dr. Poyer? Okay. Maybe she I don't know, she probably wants to come and join us. Yes. I'll just allow her to sit for us and just yes, come on. Yeah. Okay. You want to reminisce on Winston?
Yes, I am occupying his seat now.
Be careful.
No. It's a very good seat because he made a tremendous contribution to communication and broadcasting in St. Lucia. And he had this unique voice that attracted the audience, and people would listen to Winston when he makes his pronouncement in discussing a number of issues. I want to express condolences with the family, and I wish that they are strengthened by the support and outpouring sympathies that come to the family. It is an indication that Winston was well loved, well liked, and well respected in our society for the contribution that he made, especially as he was in Parliament carrying out what transpired in Parliament, try to be as accurate as possible so that the St. Lucian public will understand how this government goes about establishing and formulating policies to govern this country. So at this point, I want to allow him to fly with the angels, and he will continue to serve in heaven, where he will be a good broadcaster on the gospel.
If there's Indian down there.
No, there is. He will broadcast on the gospel, so we continue to follow in the footsteps of the Lord.
Good.
So may he rest in peace.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Poyet, and we do hope that he will rest in peace as well. And and his contribution to the nation will be remembered. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yes. So we'll continue our discussion with Earl Bousquet, veteran journalist Earl Bousquet, as we will intervene from time to time with interjections from the various ministers, especially we're particularly waiting for the Minister for Information, who may drop by in some time, and the Prime Minister, as well as the Senior Minister, who may drop by as well. So as we await Earl, we were saying...
Yeah, I was saying that the upbringing that one has follows one in life. And in terms of the politicization or depoliticization or non-politicization in terms of parents and children, they also grew up in an era when parents paid their children to vote. I know of parents who would pay their children $20 to go and vote because they've turned 18. The child isn't interested in voting, but would be paid to vote. There are also those who would be influenced to vote where their parents vote. In the case of the Springers, that would be difficult. It would have been difficult.
Earl, we are now getting this. Oh no, he's not. I thought. Okay, is he coming? All right. Okay. So the Speaker of the House of Assembly will be joining us sometime soon. But Earl, can you continue what you're saying?
So that in a situation where your parents support different parties, the choice is to the individual.
I like that, the paying of the vote. Well, the Speaker is
$20.
Yes. Okay. So. Okay, the Speaker has joined us, the Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Honorable Claudius Francis. So,
don't forget the G.
G has a lot of meanings these days. So, Mr. Speaker, we are reminiscing and paying tribute to Winston Springer. Do you care to assist us in reminiscing?
Well, certainly. Ever since I became Speaker, he has been part of the Parliament landscape, giving commentary on the proceedings. And what is interesting about Winston Sr.'s commentary, it wasn't just about what was happening. It was his sense of recall in juxtaposing what is happening against past events that would have occurred in a previous House. So, let's say a member would have said XYZ. Winston, because of his longevity, because of his knowledge, would be able to place that statement in the context of what somebody said in 1979, 1982, and that is what I marveled at. Of course, you can't take away his diction, that voice, and his eloquence.
As a CDC boy, let's get there.
Well, yeah, that's another area I knew him. Of course, I knew him from when I was a little boy, when they lived on Meekwood Street and I lived in the CDC. His youngest brother, Emmanuel, was my contemporary. So I used to be in the house on Meekwood Street ever so often, but more with Emmanuel than with Cletus. Cletus would have been contemporary of my older brother, and Winston would have been just before him. So it was really through Winston that I knew through Emmanuel that I knew the family, but I got to know them all very well lately, and of course working with Winston Jr. at HTS for the last decade and a half, so made the bond even closer.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I do wish you a very successful sitting today.
Holding a moment of silence for him in the House.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll continue with our broadcast, and we're paying tribute to Winston Springer, my co-host, who passed a few days ago, weeks ago, and Earl Bousquet, veteran journalist Earl Bousquet, is here to assist me and talk about the life of Winston as a journalist, and well, of course, as a Castries boy, and so many, a Sumerian, and so many other things.
Yeah, I was saying that I remembered once, since he, in his post-retirement period, I told him that I asked him about his relationship with Winston Jr. and how he managed between the junior and senior. And he reminded me of Oliver Scott, who was Oliver Scott, and his son was Oliver Scott Jr.
Right.
But Oliver Scott Sr. always said, there's no Oliver Scott Sr., there's one Oliver Scott, and it's Oliver Scott Jr. And Winston was of the same view. There's no Winston Springer Sr. No, he was born Winston Springer, and his son, who was also born Winston Springer, had to have the appellate of Junior, but there is only one Winston Springer, and that is the Winston we knew. But back at school, like I said, at school the Springers had their own. It's not a matter of detachment, but they had their friends, and their friends were of a particular circle, not just the CDC, but the Castries middle to upper class thinking.
You would slightly turn your head towards the camera up there, and that would.
Oh, okay. I thought it was one of those things because depuis là maka try we ko camera maka we c'est ou ka changer le mic TV cordless mic laissez pour la te cacher le camera de code là. Yes, but go ahead.
But let's venture into the journalistic. That's where the two of you.
Yes. In the 80s when I was a correspondent for Radio Angeles, I remember Julian Rogers thanking me for putting me in touch with Winston and Jeff Brady, who were two St. Lucians who really made their name on Radio Angeles, because for the sake of those who will not know, Radio Angeles was the most, it was in fact the most powerful radio station in the Eastern Caribbean, and it was listened through. It was a German-owned station, but with the strength across the region. And Winston Springer and Jeff Brady, particularly on Saturdays, they gave expressions of themselves that were hidden here, because in St. Lucia they were working at RSL, a state broadcaster, where there's a limit to which you can be yourself, and they used to ride the waves, like we said back then, on Radio Antilles. Winston's unique voice, accent, and delivery is one that has to be seen within the context of not something that he learned somewhere, not something that these are not things you go to school to learn. But that is why it is not something that one can emulate. You cannot tell somebody, try and sound like Winston.
And that's why they call it the golden voice of radio.
You cannot tell somebody, try and be like Winston. You can emulate his approach to his work.
Would you call it a commanding voice?
Yeah, I would say an attractive voice. If commanding has to be seen from the standpoint of dictation and dictating, but I think it was in radio sense it was an attractive one you wanted to hear, one you wanted to listen to, and today one you can also see. And he has made that transition with us from the time when radio, when a journalist had to go on assignment with a bag, with a phone, a camera, a notebook, and that mic, batteries, and the what have you. And today we have it all wrapped up in a telephone.
Yeah.
And what that has done is that historically it has made the new entrants in the profession lazy. I don't know any other word to use but lazy, from the standpoint that it makes the job easier, and therefore too many take the easy approach of seeking an interview by phone call rather than going to the person. Seeking interviews online rather than going and talk to and meet the person. In our days, we would take a drive to Newport, and on the way back up, we'd hear all the stories on the bus about everything that's happening everywhere. Today, it's Facebook. So we have to. Winston did not fall into that trap, but Winston would also not be left behind in the technology. So I, who was on his WhatsApp group, on his list of WhatsApp, I used to get his WhatsApp messages. I wrote an entire article in The Voice called Winston's Last Post, in which I went through some of the posts that he left in his last week alive, and in those posts one is able to see the wide range of his abilities.
Yes, well, we have the Honorable Minister for Commerce. Maybe she can just take a seat. We're paying tribute to Winston Springer. Yes, very quickly before the sitting begins.
Yes.
So I don't know if you have anything to say.
I even come in here. I mean, when I walked in, and the face is not there as usual, it's a very difficult feeling. But I want to say that Winston, when you look at the depth of his knowledge, that was one of the things in always having conversation, how we can take a subject and bring it together. And I think we'll miss that asset. So I really hope we can, whatever knowledge or whatever documentary that he has put together, that we look at it, because that's what we're not doing enough. We are filing things instead of using things and educating.
Right.
Yes, and one of the things we can do is to maybe look at one of the promising young children and try to put an award after him so that they can get into the field of journalism in a big way. Yeah?
Yeah, good idea.
Good idea. So let's work on that, and I need to take this moment to express condolences to his family. Yes.
Thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
Really appreciate it for this as well.
Yes.
and do have a successful sitting today. All right. Yeah, we are here with we're paying tribute to Winston Springer, my co-host, who passed not too long ago, a few days ago, and it's actually the first sitting since his passing. It's the first time, and so we are being joined by the Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, who is joining us in paying tribute to Winston Springer. You are actually occupying his seat, sir. Good day.
Yes, good day, good morning. Yes. Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Lord. It's rather ironic and emotional for me to be here this morning. In fact, that was the seat that Winston occupied when he was commenting on the House. What struck me with Winston, apart from the fact that I knew him for a long time, apart from his voice, the physical part of his voice, was his deep commitment to his loyalty and his commitment. That was what struck me the most of him. He believed in a cause. Winston did not always support our party, but he maintained the difference between personality and politics. He never allowed our personal friendship to get mixed in the politics, although we were on different sides. He was loyal to a T, loyal to what he believed in, committed to a cause, and always willing to speak towards that cause. So I remember him for his loyalty, I remember him for the way he prepared, the deep knowledge that he had about things. Winston took his job seriously, and I think young reporters should learn from him. He prepared, he did research, he researched topics before he came. He researched, and then again, that's important for young reporters. We're not in the time of Facebook. He actually researched. He did his, and he came with in-flight interviews, well researched, knowing more about the topic sometimes than the person he interviewed. Understand? So, and also he had a very deep sense of commitment to the professionalism of journalism. He thought journalism was a profession, and he treated it like a profession. Very seriously, Winston prepared for everything. He prepared for regular house meetings. He prepared for everything. He never went on the air without being prepared. And this is why we'll miss him. And I think young broadcasters should try their best to follow him, to follow the way he behaved, to follow the way he researched. That's the most important, the way he researched. May his soul rest in peace. His family, my deepest condolences, especially his son, Winston Jr. Winston Jr. was the apple of his eye. I mean, these two guys were friends, you know. In fact, I saw Winston on the day he died, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Before I was going for lunch in my office, he was in the office, he came, and we had a chat exactly at 1 o'clock, and then he died in the evening. It shows how temporary we are in this world. It shows how we should live every day as it was our last day, because we never know when the hour cometh. May his soul rest in peace. Tell Winston Jr. that he must live on the memory of his father. He's got footsteps to follow, and he's got to try his best and do everything his father would want him to do, which would be a professional journalist, a professional broadcaster, maintain his high principles, and be a good human being.
Thank you very much, sir. All the best, and do have us a successful sitting today. Thanks. Well, we have just been speaking with the Prime Minister, who's been reminiscing and paying tribute to Winston Springer Jr. and he talked a lot about the professional that Winston Springer was, and how he always researched before he came on air. I don't know if you heard the Prime Minister.
Yes, I did, and I agree with it, because the Prime Minister is a long-serving member of this Parliament. Only him and his predecessor have been re-elected 6 consecutive times, and he therefore has an understanding of the history of House coverage and how it has gone over the years. And that is very much true about Winston, because those of us who are veterans, by nature of our profession, which you will know, we go to cover a story, we go to a press conference, or we read a report. The photographic nature of our memory allows it to stay. Yes. So everything we read is stored in our mental hard drive. And therefore, after 20, 30, 40 years, I'm 47 years in the profession. After that length of time, things become automatic. So that he could have, like I would see on days of house meetings following from home, he would be able to relate what was said today to what was said either by that same person or by their predecessor or by someone else on the same issue 5, 10, 15 years ago. And in as much as it might not be a word-for-word recollection or the date and time, but the facts and the context and being able to ensure that people know what they are doing. The other example I liked was his ability to, like you did earlier, go through the order paper. He would have had, like you, known in advance what's on the order paper, so he would have known which minister to call or the Prime Minister to give some background on each of those issues, so that something can be said about them before the presentation and after.
And he insisted on getting this order paper.
Oh yes, because in as much as the speaker, this is the speaker's house. The order paper is what guides and decides the discussion, in as much as the standing orders of the House. So that is something that Winston and I discuss quite often. The need for people who intend to become politicians, not intend to become politicians, but who intend to run for office. There should be certain basic things you should do before. Read the Constitution, read the laws of St. Lucia, understand the standing orders of the House, understand the difference between an MP, a district representative, and a cabinet minister. All of those things
in the different chambers of the House.
Yeah, you're the different chambers. Why is one the upper house and one the lower house? Why does the upper house have a president and the lower house a speaker? Why is it that, and people don't know that the upper house is the upper house because it has the power to stop something that the lower house has agreed upon. So that
and it's basically a filter.
Yes. So I think Winston brought with him the accumulated knowledge that came with experience over time, and he was able, like I was saying earlier, to also keep up with the time by having his Facebook account, having his
I actually was just coming to his post-retirement period, you know, and you're now talking about him keeping in touch with the new technology, being acquainted with that.
His last week of posts, there were things relating to definition of what he might call, I forget the term he used, but he had a definition of a particular politician who he named. Then he had the best example I've seen of an old-time calypso, and that is Harry Belafonte and Nat King Cole
Mama Luka Bubu
singing Mama Luka Bubu. And I got one today of Mighty Sparrow talking about growing up as a how you call them, acolyte, and actually singing in Latin. He can recall at whatever his age is now. I'll send it to you. He was singing out what he would have to say in Latin as an acolyte and what the priest would reply. And there was the Mighty Sparrow in Latin in 2023. I'm sure Winston would have circulated that. Another one I saw, which he would have circulated, was the Speaker of the Antigua Parliament suspending a Speaker of the Antigua Parliament suspending an independent member, and it would have had reference to some of what we were doing here. But I'm sure he would have circulated that as a means of getting people to understand that what is happening here is also happening elsewhere in the region. So I think that Winston's contribution is one that will live beyond his memory. I think that it will not be fair to ask his son to be like your dad, but I think it would be best to ask him to continue making his dad proud. You know, because he has to develop his own. He cannot continue to grow in his father's shadow. He'll always have that name, but he has to become him, because he's the only Winston Springer left. And he's the only Winston Springer left.
I think it was the Prime Minister, one of them said that he was the apple of his eye, and they followed in the journalism realm sphere, just, and so what we could probably say is at this point is that the family, I'm sure they know it's not easy for the family. I did speak with Cletus and Dennis. I know it's difficult for them as well. I didn't get a chance to speak with Winston Jr., but we would like to.
But I heard somebody mention. I heard the speaker mention an Emmanuel. I didn't know that one.
Yes.
Maybe I know him and don't remember him.
Yes, I think the speaker said Emmanuel is his contemporary.
His contemporary.
Yes,
so he would have been,
Yeah. So we would really like to wish the family all the best. We know it's difficult at this time.
Winston ici à Audios.
Moi bien content au commencer en Timos en créole puisque ma qualité est bon. Moi bien content pour dire ça puisque ma partie je m'attends Winston parler créole c'est là il finit à 6 moi nous te capable petit blague non mais eux il capable qui nous cani pour double puisque manque qui s'agent qu'a venu tout à l'heure avec nous qui commencer session
merci pour toute bagaille, merci pour l'opportunité avec n'importe temps besoin d'assistance en non Winston avec un non travail nous comme professionnels moi qui toujours là. Merci tout le monde.
Merci un peu là
Let us pray.
As we prepare for the sitting of this House, it is my prayer that all members of this noble institution will be mindful of the sanctity of this chamber and as such conduct the business of the people with a sense of integrity, ever being mindful of the account that they must give both to God and the electorate of their stewardship in this house, in this time, and this place. Also, being mindful that this sitting is global and many eyes and ears are focused on you. And most of all, that you be guided by the petitions and acknowledgement of the prayer which follows. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we, thine unworthy servants, here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that having thy fear always before our eyes, and lay aside all private interests, prejudice, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. The grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all, now and forevermore. Amen.
Good morning, members. I beg to announce that His Excellency the Acting Governor General has been pleased to assent the following bills: credit reporting, registration of supervised entities, anti-terrorism amendment, companies amendment, mutual assistance in criminal matters amendment, extradition amendment, appropriation 2023-2024. I am in receipt of correspondence from the member for Viewfort South advising of his inability to attend today's sitting. Members, it is with regret and sorrow that I advise of the passing of Winston Springer Sr., who is almost always with us during sittings. On your behalf, I extend condolences to his family and his friends, and I ask that you rise with me for a moment of silence. Thank you, members. I also regretfully advise of the passing of the member of the staff of the External Affairs Ministry, headed by the member for Labrie, Mrs. Bernadette George Marcial, who would have over the years interacted with every member of this chamber in the course of travel preparations especially. May her soul and that of Winston Springer Sr. rest in peace. Members will recall certain events which occurred at our last sitting on May 2nd, 2023, resulting in the suspension of the member for Mico South. Much has transpired since, including the filing of an action in the High Court by the member. In the course of the preliminary hearing, there was an intervention from the member for Castries South in his capacity as leader of government business in this honorable house. Suffice it to say that that intervention has resulted in the member for Mico South being present here today, but with conditions. Among the conditions agreed to and endorsed by the High Court is one which allows the member for Mico South to be in his seat, but the member is not allowed to participate in any form or fashion in the proceedings until the motion to temporarily lift the suspension pending the outcome of the conclusion of the member's court action is completed. I reiterate that though the member is present, he is barred from participating in the House proceedings until the motion is voted on. Honorable members, I want to advise that we are now on social media, that is the Parliament, via Facebook, and we encourage you, as well as the general public, to share, like, and follow our page. The official name is the Office of the Parliament of St. Lucia. Statement from ministers. Minister for Equity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, parliamentarians. The Ministry of Equity, Social Justice and Empowerment consistently seeks to improve the delivery of services to the poor and vulnerable population in St. Lucia. As such, it has engaged civil society groups and faith-based organizations with a track record of vibrant community outreach in the area of social care, in relevant discussions to inculcate a culture of caring in St. Lucia. For the first time on record, St. Lucia will join in the observance of National Caring Day, an initiative created by Caring Bridge, a registered non-profit organization. In fulfillment of their corporate responsibility and in an effort to give back to society, community and faith-based organizations have agreed to collaborate with the Ministry of Equity for hosting an annual Day of Caring, where vulnerable persons will be treated to a series of activities promoting their spiritual upliftment, recreation, and entertainment. As an immediate outcome, the parties have identified existing synergies in their mutual efforts of outreach and service to the homeless, persons with disabilities, impoverished and indigent constituents in society. While the commemoration cadred for this year will focus on persons living with disabilities, the observance of National Day of Caring is to bring to focus and to celebrate our own caring ways. Additionally, it is to encourage caring and to deepen our passion for caring. Caring for our environment, caring for our neighbors, caring for persons with disabilities, caring for animals, caring for our communities. It is to foster the Russian attitude just to provide a caring deed. The National Day of Caring will be launched on Wednesday, 7th June 2023 at the Constitution Park in Castries. The theme for this year observance is caring for each other. Make a difference in your community. Coupled with a color scheme of white and a touch of other national flag colors, we will celebrate a caring day. Apart from remarks from the minister, myself, and other community and faith-based leaders, the ceremony will see the presentation of awards to 5 persons with disabilities who have made significant contribution to society. 2 other major activities will be a panel discussion grouping faith-based and other civil society organizations with a track record of vibrant community outreach and offering specialized care to families with children who are mentally challenged and with sick and shut-in elderly in the need of social assistance and psychosocial, emotional support. The National Day of Caring will also endorse activities that promote spiritual upliftment as well as recreation, entertainment, and personal assistance to those deemed most vulnerable. Activities will be hosted island-wide by schools, community organizations, youth, and sporting groups. The observance of National Day of Caring is expected to be an annual event with different areas of vulnerability being placed under the microscope as the observance advances. Mr. Speaker, this is the statement that as we bring this National Day of Caring to our society, but I would like to end on a very important note that this month was Blind Awareness Month, and today being the last day, I would like to join. Well, I think that the Association for the Blind Welfare Association did invite myself to participate in a church service in Tuapito, but I want to share with you just 5 seconds of the reality, and I ask all of us to close our eyes for about 10 seconds. Please, everyone, as we share in the world of those persons who are visually impaired, as I take my seat. Thank you very much. As you close your eyes, just for 5 seconds. Everyone, please. As you do so, please remember this is the world that those who are visually impaired, this is their reality. Thank you very much.
Papers to be laid. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture and Information.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument Number 43 of 2023, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Tamarind Village Inc. Order. Statutory Instrument Number 44 of 2023, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Malabar Beach Limited, order.
Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for housing and local government.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to lay the following papers standing in the name of the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Youth Economy, Justice and National Security, Statutory Instrument Number 38 of 2023, Fiscal Incentives, Amazon Seamoss Cooperation Order, Statutory Instrument Number 39 of 2023, Registration of Supervised Entities Regulations, Statutory Instrument Number 40 of 2023, St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority Airport Tariff Amendment Regulations, Statutory Instrument Number 41 of 2023, St. Lucia Parliament Proclamation Proroguing Parliament, Statutory Instrument Number 42 of 2023, St. Lucia Parliament Appointment of Session of Parliament, Statutory Instrument Number 46 of 2023, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, Number 6 Order, Statutory Instrument Number 47 of 2023, Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court Civil Procedure Rules, Revised Edition 2023, Statutory Instrument Number 50 of 2023, Excise Tax Number 50 of 2023, Amendment Schedule Number 7 Order. I now wish to lay the following paper standing in my substantive name, Mr. Speaker. Statutory Instrument Number 48 of 2023, St. Lucia National Housing Corporation, Larry Shoes, Viewfort Vesting Order.
Minister for Commerce, Industry, Enterprise Development and Consumer Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument Number 45 of 2023, Price Control Amendment Number 6 Order, Statutory Instrument Number 49 of 2023, Price Control Amendment Number 7 Order, St. Lucia Bureau of Standards 2019-2020 Annual Report.
Motions, Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following motion. Whereas on Tuesday, the 2nd of May 2023, the member for Miku South was found in breach of Standing Order 43-4. And whereas the House of Assembly, utilizing Standing Orders 43-4 and 43-6, voted to suspend the member for Miku South until, I quote, an apology to the House and the withdrawal of the offending words cited by the presiding officer were undertaken. And whereas the House of Assembly is fully satisfied that the suspension was lawful and in keeping with the standing orders, and whereas members of the House of Assembly do not wish for the constituency of Miku South to be without representation in the House of Assembly, be it resolved that the House of Assembly agrees to the lifting of the suspension without prejudice to the legal action by the member for Miku South against his suspension, and be it further resolved that the lifting of the suspension shall be effective immediately following the passage of this motion, and the member will be at liberty to carry on his duties in service of the House and the constituency of Miku South. Mr. Speaker, as cited in the motion, it is stated that the member of Miku South was found in breach of Standing Order 43-4. And Mr. Speaker, in your preamble, you stated the conditions under which the honorable member was allowed in the House today. And it was very instructive, the words that you used, that the honorable member has taken action against this honorable House in the High Court. And we have agreed with the High Court that we would allow him to come in pending a resolution of this matter. In presenting this motion, Mr. Speaker, I want us to go over what happened, how it happened, and how did we arrive at where we are today. So I ask you, Mr. Speaker, to bear with me as I go through exactly what happened and dissect why it is we've found ourselves in the present situation and where do we go from here. Mr. Speaker, what did the member for Miku South say that caused such an offense, Mr. Speaker? What did he say? What led to his action constituting a breach of Standing Order 43-4? Mr. Speaker, I shall quote from a document, Mr. Speaker, and I think we can all obtain the official transcripts of the House, Mr. Speaker, but it's a document that the member himself provided elsewhere, Mr. Speaker, and I want to quote his exact words. And I want you to listen carefully, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister, that's what he said, he's quoting himself. The Prime Minister would put that this reference to corruption. So if we want to resolve crime in this country, Mr. Speaker, it starts in cabinet. I want those words, Mr. Speaker, to sink in. It starts in cabinet. The level of corruption of members in your own cabinet has to be addressed. This situation is bananas. How could you have a piece of land, Mr. Speaker, that was valued in 2013 at almost 7 million, and in 2021 it was revalued to be at 3.5 million? And he states that you interjected when he said so. Of course, he continues. The crime situation is serious. The government needs to address it in their own cabinet. The Prime Minister keeps on playing this game that he is the big tough guy and the buck stops with him. We have not seen that, and we have to set the example as leaders. I want you to note, Mr. Speaker, he is saying we must set the example as leaders. There are too many examples, Mr. Speaker, of members who are doing that. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Of course, then, Mr. Speaker, the member from Castres Central subsequently rose on a point of order and asked that this matter be addressed. I will not go into all the details, Mr. Speaker, of what happened after, but we met on Tuesday the 2nd, and he was asked to prove that there was validity and truth to what he said. The member from Castres Central presented an understanding of what took place. He went meticulously in detail to show what had happened over the years. He also showed the process that was followed for the acquisition of the land, for the valuation of the land. He compared it with what happened in the past. He indicated the process that was followed by the National Housing Corporation for the sale of the land. He clearly established that he as minister was not responsible for the sale of the land or undertook the sale. He explained to us in detail, remarkable detail. And then the member from Miku South was asked, having heard the member from Castres Central, can you indicate to us where is the corruption that you spoke of? Where is the crime in cabinet? Because you are saying as a member of this house that the honorable members around this house who are in cabinet are criminals. Because if you say there is crime in cabinet, then there are criminals there. You're saying that there is corruption. And you're saying it individually for the member from Castres Central and collectively for the members of cabinet. In this honorable house, this is a very serious statement to make. You are standing in this house where you're not even allowed to call members liars and tell members they are lying, because that's not acceptable behavior in this house. I remember in this very house, I had not even said it on my feet. I whispered to a member next to me that don't mind him, he was lying. I'm the former member from Castle Office was lying. The speaker heard me, and members objected, and I was asked to withdraw. And I said, Mr. Speaker, I was not even speaking to him. And I was asked to withdraw because the speaker had heard, even if it was off the record. And we had an exchange. And I said then, Mr. Speaker, I don't need to call somebody liar or lying. I can use other more elegant words to describe him. But since you, the Speaker, have asked me to withdraw, I will respect the House, I will respect the Speaker, and I withdraw. That's how we conducted ourselves, Mr. Speaker. That's how you behave in this chamber, Mr. Speaker. So the member was asked to prove his allegation, because the member from Castle Central had gone through in detail what had happened. And Mr. Speaker, I want, Mr. Speaker, to go through the exchange between yourself and himself, Mr. Speaker, because it's illustrative. It's illustrative of his conduct and his behavior. Because having heard the member from Castle Central, he is then asked to respond. Where is the corruption? So I want, Mr. Speaker, for you to bear with me as I quote. And you would say to him, how does the member from Castle Central and his ministry, acting on evaluation of a certified valuer, acting on the basis of letters being written to SLASPER requesting their involvement and being told that they are not interested, how does the sale for $1 million US translate to corruption on the part of either the member for Castle Central or the cabinet? That is what I want answered. So you're saying to him, having heard the member from Castle Central, responding to your comments previously, tell me, where is the corruption? He goes on and on, that it was valued in 2013 at $67 a square foot, and a new valuation was done that brought it down to $37. So he's asked again, are you suggesting that there is collusion between the member for Castle Central and the valuer? Because you have to show that there is corruption. He says, Mr. Speaker, let us be very clear and honest with each other. So the Mr. Speaker then asked him, are you suggesting we are being dishonest? He says, no, I just want to bring it to the point. And he goes on, and he is going on and on and on. And the Speaker asked him again as presiding officer, member, I'm hearing all what you are saying. I want to repeat my question. You are placing a reliance on the evaluation of Parcel 11 that, in my humble opinion, is misplaced. I am asking you, there is a valuation of $3.5 million upon which the member was not even involved, because nothing that you have said has shown that the member was involved. I saw the chairman involved, I saw the various boards involved. And you continue. The question is a very simple one. Even assuming all what you are saying is correct, how does that translate to corruption on the part of the member personally and cabinet collectively? That is all I want answered. You are actually guiding him to focus on showing that there is corruption, because that's your claim. He says, Mr. Speaker, there are many more issues that we allege that this cabinet, and again you stop him. I don't know about what other issues members are alleging. I speak with a very great degree of specificity. What is the corruption that you allege in the transaction based on what you have said? He goes on, Mr. Speaker, I am going to repeat myself. There was a valuation done in 2014 for exactly the same price, and he's going on and on. You say to him, member, you choose to ignore my question. I can only ask you to take your seat. That you shall not respond to my question, and I shall make a determination on this matter on the basis of the facts presented to me. Out of abundance of caution, and then he was leaving at that point. But then I want you to also hear how it goes on and how it concludes. The Speaker says to him, what is before me is not whether land is valued at 20 million or 60 million. It is whether the transaction made in the sale of the land to a client of an attorney, whether corruption was attached to that sale. Because that's what he alleged. So you ask him, can you establish it? You have not made that case. And I ask you, I am the judge in this chamber, and I would ask you to withdraw the statement that I have read. And he says, I will not withdraw. Now let's go over that again. You've asked him as presiding officer to withdraw the statement because in your opinion as presiding officer, he's not established that there was corruption by the honorable member and by cabinet. And by cabinet. And you ask him to withdraw the statement that is made, and he says he will not withdraw his statement. Mr. Speaker, of course, in keeping with Standing Orders 43, the House was asked to take action as such behavior by a member is not acceptable. But Mr. Speaker, the member for Miku South is no stranger to misbehavior in the House. He's no stranger. And the member from...
Speaker, point of order.
What is the point of order?
Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 35. I think the member is...
35?
Is discussing a matter which is in the courts, as you indicated in your opening remarks, and the member should desist from divulging information that should be discussed in the courts.
Where in 45 does it?
Well, I stood on the point of order, Mr. Speaker, because the member was out of well, I can say misleading, because he was going in a direction that he should not be going at this point.
Which is?
He was discussing a matter which is in the courts.
And where does the standing orders preclude a matter before the court being discussed?
By your very own words in previous...
No, I'm asking you where in the standing orders...
You have indicated that matters before the court should not be...
I have never indicated that. I said...
In the House.
I read the standing order very clearly. It says, where in the opinion of the presiding officer, what is being discussed may prejudice the case. I am not seeing anything you saying there.
In your opinion, you don't see that what is being discussed publicly right now, because the whole of St. Lucia is looking at this, you know.
But what is he saying?
But he's discussing the whole items of the case, Mr. Speaker.
The case.
No, but member from Strozel, Saltibus, the very motion before the House is about the matter. We told the court that we will allow him to come back, and I will deal with that in a while. I'm not discussing whether his claims are right or wrong. I'm not dealing with this. But the court, we told the court we're going to allow him back, and I will explain a little later why we told the court that. So I'm not going into the arguments, because I can speak a bit about it. I would love to. Because in his document to the courts, he quoted words I made in this House, which the transcript showed is not true. In fact, I would love him to explain to the court how he quoted me in an affidavit signed by him saying it's true, and I never said those things in the House because the transcript of the House does not say that. But that's another story. So we will deal with the court case in court. We're dealing with the Parliament case right now. So I was making the point, Mr. Speaker, that the member from Miku South is no stranger to misbehavior in this House. And other members, I'm sure, will give you the details and the visuals to show you how he has misbehaved in this House, Mr. Speaker. They will show it to you. This member for Miku South has no respect for the courts. He doesn't, for the House. He doesn't even have respect for his own members of cabinet that he sat with. And they all know that. But of course, they're hanging on to the coattails, hoping somehow or the other they can finally, win a seat somewhere, Mr. Speaker. And I wish them well, especially those that want to go up against the Prime Minister. But Mr. Speaker, the point is the member has misbehaved in this House over and over and over again, Mr. Speaker. Refused to elect a Deputy Speaker. Has flouted the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Over and over, Mr. Speaker. And I can give details upon details, Mr. Speaker. But he was Prime Minister then. So as Prime Minister, he can terrorize former Speaker Theodore John. He can terrorize Andy Daniel, openly say to them in his house, I shall not sit or I shall not withdraw, and they cannot do anything about it. And all his members know that is true. That's how he behaved. And you will see the evidence later on, Mr. Speaker. That's how he behaved. But he could not have been sanctioned because he, Mr. Speaker, was the Prime Minister. But he's no longer Prime Minister. And if he misbehaves in this House, there are sanctions, Mr. Speaker. There are sanctions. And he was asked, Mr. Speaker, by you to withdraw the statement. And he refused to withdraw it and showed gross disrespect to the presiding officer, Mr. Speaker. Now, somebody might ask you the question, why did we suspend him? We suspended him to show him, Mr. Speaker, that he must respect the rules of the House. If you accuse a member, all you have been asked to do is to prove what you are saying. That's what you've been asked to do. If you say a member is corrupt, which you ought not to even say in the House, because it is bringing the member, into disrepute, Mr. Speaker, at least you have to prove it. If you say somebody sold something, you must prove it. You must show the evidence, Mr. Speaker. I came in this House, Mr. Speaker, and I remember trying to table the contract with Don Lockerbie. I had a copy of the contract, signed, Mr. Speaker, and I tried to table it, and I was prevented from tabling it to make it a document of the House. A signed contract to prove, because they were denying the Don Lockerbie arrangement. And I was going to table the contract. That's how you prove things. And I was told I'm not allowed to. And then you know what he said? It was a fake document. The DSH document, the contract, the framework agreement, we tried to table it in this House. And you'd recall the member saying on television that it was a fake document. It's on social media, they saw it. They denied it existed. We had copies. And you know how it finally came that in fact they were lying was when the member from Strozel Saltiba said he signed it, but he had not read it. Okay, you didn't say that, but you signed it. You said you signed it. But okay, you didn't say you did not read it. I remember you saying you did not read it. But anyway, let's put that aside. Let's put it aside. The same document they said was a fake document. Okay, you didn't recall. That's even better. That's even better. That's even better. You should have allowed the previous comment I made by Stan. But let's move on. Let's move on. Honorable member. So, okay. But the point I was making is not even that, honorable member. The point I was making is how we came into this House, and when we made a claim, we proved it. If we could not prove it, we kept quiet, Mr. Speaker. When we stood up in this House and we spoke about the Wasco Dam scandal, I had all the documents to show, and the member from Castries East had all the documents to show what had happened in the selection of the contractor and everything else. We were prevented from making that document at the House. But they have a reason why they do that, because they don't want the House to record the acts that they did, Mr. Speaker. So we have come to this House, we've made claims, and on every instance we've proved it. Why can't you prove it? Why can't you prove it? And you've been asked over and over to withdraw, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the House has the capacity to discipline members. It has the capacity. When members disregard the rules of the House can discipline them. And the House has shown that it is willing to act when necessary. It's not its first inclination. Members are called upon to withdraw. Honorable member, can you withdraw? Honorable member, that's the first inclination of the House. But he doesn't listen to that. He doesn't, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, we did not suspend him because of any malice or pettiness. We did not. And I want to go back to my comments shortly after that incident. Shortly after that incident, Mr. Speaker, I want to go to the comments I made at the start of my presentation on the budget statement. Right after it happened, Immediately after it happened, Mr. Speaker, I want to read my comments for you, Mr. Speaker, and I shall proceed. Mr. Speaker, before I proceed, Mr. Speaker, with the substance of my contribution, I think we need to just reflect for a few moments on what transpired earlier today as it relates to the member for Miku South. I think, Mr. Speaker, for those who are watching, and certainly for us in this honorable chamber, it was very disconcerting, the behavior of the member for Miku South and the attitude that he showed towards this honorable house. It is never our intent, Mr. Speaker, to disenfranchise any member, or for that purpose to disenfranchise any constituency that elected a member to sit here to represent them. But I think we needed to get across to the honorable member that in this honorable house, there is a code of conduct. There is a manner in which you ought to behave, and there are respects, and that there are conventions and other accepted practices in this honorable house. I have been asked before to withdraw statements that I was convinced I did not have any reason to withdraw. I have been asked, Mr. Speaker, during my 5 years in opposition to express my apologies for what I would have said because another member would have felt offended. Even if I felt I was right when the Speaker asked me to, I acceded, Mr. Speaker. I never showed disrespect, even when I believe I was right. And our actions today is to show to the honorable member, not that any one of us in particular, but as a collective, this chamber, this institution that we are part of, ask that he shows respect and regard for it. I have no desire, Mr. Speaker, to see that the honorable member does not participate in future deliberations. I want to repeat it. I have no desire, Mr. Speaker, to see that the honorable member does not participate in future deliberations. Mr. Speaker, I suspect it will be up to you to engage him on moving forward. But he has to accept that this house demands from him a more civilized conduct in this honorable chamber. And that, Mr. Speaker, I want to put on record as the intent of the decision we took. That's why we did it. I hope the honorable member recognizes that he ought to be in this house as elected by the people to represent them. He may remain arrogant, he may remain very haughty, and he may believe that he has no reason to show any respect to the chamber. That is for him to decide. But we want the honorable member to understand that there is a particular way you ought to behave in this honorable house. And Mr. Speaker, I trust, like I said, you will engage him and ensure that we can move forward, because our ultimate aim is that everyone who's elected by the people should be in this house representing them. And I said that minutes after he was suspended. Minutes after. That was my statement, Mr. Speaker, because we want him in this house, Mr. Speaker. So, after all of this, what has happened? What did he do? What did he do? The first thing he tried to do was to get public support for what he called his democratic rights. And today, they applied to the police for a walk for democracy. Not a walk for health, not a walk for healthy lifestyles, not a, how you call it, moving St. Lucia. You know, he wants a walk for democracy. Now, we all know there's a lot of semantics. A walk, a run, a march, se membagaila. But Mr. Speaker, I want you to reflect on this honorable member. He says his democratic rights have been infringed. He wants the public to support him for his actions. Mr. Speaker, what actions? To be disrespectful in the house? Because that's what it's about. That's what he wants the public to support him, to stand in the house and accuse members, and when asked to prove what you are saying, he doesn't do it. He disrespects the chair. And like a very naughty child, when a parent tries to discipline him, throws a tantrum. So he wants the public to support him in that behavior. The same person who misbehaved for so many years when he was Prime Minister. But all of a sudden he's no longer Prime Minister, so he has to account for his actions. So he now wants the public to support him. And he says it's his democratic rights, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, democratic rights? You can hear outside, Mr. Speaker, the crowd chanting. When we all came in, he had his supporters outside. You recall a few years ago when he was Prime Minister, this Parliament was barricaded. St. Lucians were not allowed to come within 100 meters of Parliament. Barricade. Stay away. What you see outside, Mr. Speaker, is democracy at work. This is democracy. This is democracy. No member in here has any fear of the people supporting United Workers' Party being outside expressing their views. We have no fear. We will allow them every single day to be outside expressing their views. No fear. And you know why? Because they are in the minority, Mr. Speaker. They do not speak for St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. But you know what's even more interesting for me? They're not marching and demonstrating for help for the poor. They're not marching and demonstrating because the economy is not working. They're not marching and demonstrating because there was no economic growth. They're not marching and demonstrating because there was no help for housing. They're not marching because there were no laptops for the children. They were not demonstrating because there was jazz in Marsha. They're not. All the bread and butter issues, they're not demonstrating because there's no need to demonstrate. There's no need to demonstrate. So they are demonstrating, they say, for their democratic rights. But they're outside in Parliament yard expressing their views, and you swear is the birth of democracy in the Greek city-state of Athens. When Plato and Aristotle and all of them encourage the people to speak up, speak up, speak up, and express your views, the birth of democracy. Mr. Speaker, that's what's happening outside, democracy. The same member who led a government had closed down Radio St. Lucia, the national radio station, because they said there had too many SLP hacks working there. Same. The same. I mean, I can go on and talk about the violations of democracy. You know, Mr. Speaker, I had to go through an experience with the last government, and they claim all kinds of things against me. But the one that really shocked me, and I've not really said it in public, and somebody reminded me of it this morning. Albert Fridges worked in the High Commission together with me. So they wanted to interview him to find out what may have happened in the High Commission. And the two police officers who were investigating told him to come for the interview. And he asked where. They said at Prime Minister's residence. And the lawyer said, what? This is supposed, assuming it's an investigation as legitimate, why do we have to go to Prime Minister's residence for him to be interviewed? And he never went. But the point I'm making, democracy. You have a claim or an interest in the actions of somebody, but the interview's been done by the investigators. They are located in the Prime Minister's residence. Think about that, people. Think about that. When you talk about democracy, the politicization of investigations against your enemies. Remember the Watergate scandal? Remember that? Talk about democracy. We will always allow the people to speak up, Mr. Speaker, to say, Mr. Speaker. But you know what I found even most interesting, member from Roselle Saltibus? Is a member from Miku South says, this is a seminal case that he is taking against the state. And he needs a fundraiser. But earlier on he had said, I can take care of myself, I can take care of myself. It's not for me, it's for the people. And then he says he needs a fundraiser, but he doesn't have money to pay for the case, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, his second action is to file a case in the courts. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to go into the details because obviously it's a matter before the courts, Mr. Speaker. But we need to say what's in the public domain. So I'm not going to go into all the details of the case, Mr. Speaker. But I want you to reflect, Mr. Speaker, on the seriousness of what the honorable member has done. The honorable member says that the standing orders are unconstitutional. They are unlawful. And therefore, by suspending him, they violated his rights as a citizen. Now, if the standing orders are unconstitutional and illegal, and Mr. Speaker, I mean, I know you won't allow me, but I could have actually quoted from the document, Mr. Speaker, that he filed. It means the standing orders that we've had since independence, that was inherited from time we were a colony and an associated state, that John Compton, Henry Girodi, Evans Cauldron, Mr. Speaker, Alan Louisi, George Mallet, those standing orders that were negotiated and put together by the chambers before us, Mr. Speaker. It means speakers like St. Clair Daniel and Matthew Roberts and husbands and all of them have been engaging in an illegal act. Think about that, Mr. Speaker. Think about it. That by suspending him, that's an unconstitutional act. It's illegal. It means the very foundation upon which we are in this house is illegal. It means the processes that we pass the laws may have been illegal. Tell me, Mr. Speaker. Of course, he's trying to refer specifically to the issue of suspension. Maybe he's going to argue before the courts. It's not all the standing orders, but it's just the one that they use against me that's illegal. I'm not discussing the details of the case. You asked me not to. So if you want me to go into a legal analysis, I will call on more learned people to do so. But I'm telling you, if the Constitution says there shall be a parliament, and the parliament shall regulate its own conduct and its rules, the parliament is not, the standing orders are not unreasonable. The standing orders are not asking you to go and commit suicide or to go and take a life or to go and seize property. The standing orders is about the conduct of the business of parliament. How does it become, but anyway, I'll leave that for the courts to decide, Mr. Speaker. You know, so Mr. Speaker, the honorable member, Mr. Speaker, goes to the courts, and in addition to saying that the standing orders are illegal and unconstitutional, he says to the courts, place an injunction on the House. Until this matter is decided in the courts, ask them to take me back in. Listen to that. Put an injunction on the House, and until this matter is decided, to take me back in. But we want you back in. But we want you back in. I read my comments I made minutes after we suspended him, where I said we want him in the chamber. We don't want you out. So we told the court there's no need for a hearing on injunction. If he wants to go to court to decide whether this House standing orders are unconstitutional or not, let him go. We want him in the House. He has to answer about the Uronora International Airport Redevelopment Project. He has to answer about St. Jude's. He has to answer about the Rodney Bay roundabouts. He has to answer about the Wasco Dam, so John Compton Dam. He has to answer about the Padua letter. He has to answer about the vaccines. There's a lot for him to answer, and if he's not in this House, he cannot answer. The lands that we just started, I can give him the list, Mr. Speaker. He has to be in this House. He has a privileges committee to attend. He has, if he's not a member, he cannot attend. We want him in the House. So we told the court, there is no issue. We don't need no injunction. We don't want anything, Mr. Speaker. Let him, I'm not even going into whether the court would have granted it or would not have granted it. I don't even want to. That's for the lawyers to decide. We know we want him in the House. We want him here. And the courts will decide if what we did was legal or not, or whether he's supposed to apologize or not. And then I want him to now say the courts are unconstitutional. I want him to have another fundraiser to say the courts are illegal. That's what I want him to do. Because we want him inside here. Because if you're going to accuse people of being corrupt. And why are they corrupt? Is because the valuation of the land changed. So what happened to DSH and 1,000 acres at $1 an acre? Was there corruption? Honorable member, was there corruption? Was there corruption? The lands up north that the developer, that NIC was about to buy, NIC was told, don't buy it. Give the money instead to a private developer to buy it. Was that corruption? Was that corruption? Can you think about that? Somebody is arguing to move the valuation from 7 million to 3.5 million is corruption, and they are criminals. But then the lands that were going to be bought by NIC for the people of St. Lucia, they were instructed not to buy. Take the same money, give to a private developer from outside St. Lucia to buy the lands. And that's not corruption too? DSH is not corruption too? I'm not saying it is. But if that's your yardstick for measuring corruption, you have a lot of acts of corruption to answer. A lot. But I will not accuse you or any member of corruption because I don't know the details. I don't know it. But that is how this party operates. That's how this party operates, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the courts will decide, and the courts will make a final determination, and will respect the decision of the courts. If the courts rule, Mr. Speaker, that what we did was unconstitutional, what we did was unlawful, then we were wrong. But we know we followed standing orders that were established and enacted in this honorable house. We followed it. And if the court said it was unconstitutional, then we'll have to correct it. But if the courts find we were right, the honorable member will have to account for his actions. At least the House will then decide what happens next. But we want the honorable member in this House. And I support this motion that I've presented because we want him to be back in the House, Mr. Speaker. We want him to be back. Mr. Speaker, one final point I want to make. The honorable member says in his filing in the courts that he was never given a chance to withdraw and apologize. Mr. Speaker, never. And I read the transcript where he was asked by the presiding officer to withdraw, and he said he shall not. And I'm putting it before this House and for the record that the member still has an opportunity to withdraw his comments and apologize. Because if you go into the courts to say they treated you wrongfully, they never ask you to apologize, and they just suspend you, you have been given another opportunity when you have been allowed back in this House. Of course, we have items on the agenda, on the order paper that he has to stick to. But I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, you will give him a minute for him to apologize and withdraw his statement. Because we are not denying him an opportunity for him to withdraw and for him to apologize. Because it's disingenuous to say you were suspended without giving you a chance to withdraw and apologize. Because the transcripts show where you were asked and you said, I will not. And then you were told you will stay out until you apologize and withdraw. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is fulfilling a promise we made to the courts that we will allow him to come back in. Let the court decide what the matter is. No drama. No drama. We want you in here. We want you to keep the member from Strozel company. He gets lonely when you're not there. So for fear that he might lose his way in this House, we want him to be here with you, honorable member. So we want him back in this House. So honorable members, I present to you this motion to approve this motion and to allow the member from Miku South to come back to this House to account for his actions, for him as the rightful role of leader of the opposition to hold this government to account. But he will learn, Mr. Speaker, there are rules, there are conventions, there are practices, there is decorum, there is dignity that one must display when they conduct themselves in this House. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Half an hour.
The member for Castries Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I have it there. Member of Castries Central, just 1 minute.
Yes.
Because that's a motion without notice. I don't have to announce, but announcing it's asking that it was not on the order paper. It's a motion without notice. Members, the question is that be it resolved that the House of Assembly agrees to the lifting of the suspension without prejudice to the legal action by the member for Miku South against the suspension is heard. And be further resolved that the lifting of the suspension shall be effective immediately following the passage of this motion, and the member will be at liberty to carry on his duties in service of the House and the constituency of Miku South. Member of Castries Central. I now put, no, member of Castries Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Unlike my very good friend to my right insinuated, the voice isn't that good, Mr. Speaker, and I don't intend to be extremely long. I will not withdraw. That statement resonates, Mr. Speaker. It resonates with the behavioral pattern of the leader of the opposition, member for Miku South. Member for Miku South wanted to be in the House. He was granted the opportunity to be in the House. But as you can see, Mr. Speaker, his chair is conspicuously empty. So basically, it was an imposition that he wanted to come to pass. Mr. Speaker, when I was first elected as a parliamentarian and took my seat in this august chamber just over 17 years ago, I never thought there would come a time when I would have had to make a contribution on a motion of such a nature. But then again, whilst this is the first time, we have seen many events happening in this country of ours for the very first time since 2016, when the United Workers' Party were victorious at the polls. You see, Mr. Speaker, we are called honorable, and by virtue of carrying that title, we're expected to do what is best. We're expected to uphold the laws. We're expected not to make a mockery of the laws, and we're expected to conduct ourselves with a certain degree of decorum. We're expected, Mr. Speaker, to preach and accept adherence to our laws, but most notably, the supreme law of this land, our Constitution. From the time the United Workers' Party won the elections in 2016, the then Prime Minister and current member for Miku North showed disdain, Miku South, showed disdain, showed disrespect, and showed total disregard for the laws of this country. It started, Mr. Speaker, by a blatant breach of Section 36 of the Constitution, which reads, Mr. Speaker, Section 54(1), which reads, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, Each session of Parliament shall be held at such place within St. Lucia and shall begin at such time, not being later than 12 months from the end of the preceding session of Parliament, if it has been prorogued, or more than 1 month, not more than 1 month from the holding of a general election. Not more than 1 month after the general elections of 2016, Parliament was supposed to have convened. It did not. The then Prime Minister blatantly disregarded the constitutional provision, and when members of the media confronted him, those in my view who were apparently more savvy than him in that regard, what did he respond to them? He responded by saying, even if the Constitution says that Parliament must convene within 30 days, the Constitution did not lay sanctions for non-adherence. That was his response, Mr. Speaker. So there were no sanctions imposed, and therefore I don't have to comply. Is that what honorable men do, Mr. Speaker? As a leader, you comply with the laws of the country, Mr. Speaker. You cannot say if the Constitution does not impose sanctions, you are under no obligation to comply. And you know, Mr. Speaker, that was the start. That was the start of the disobedience to the laws of this country by a government headed by the member for Miku South. Our Parliament quickly became the laughing stock of the region, Mr. Speaker. You had the situation then with the Deputy Speaker. Section 36 of the Constitution mandates the appointment of a Deputy Speaker as soon as it is convenient. Let me quickly read it. When the House first meets after a general election of members, and before it proceeds to the dispatch of any other business except the election of the Speaker, the House shall, and shall is mandatory, Mr. Speaker. It is not discretionary. It does not say the House may. It says the House shall appoint a Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what happened to us? What happened to us? The Prime Minister then, he forgot that constitutional provision. He forgot the convention that obtained. He forgot that this has never happened in the history of this country. And he made a mockery of this provision, Mr. Speaker. He made a mockery. And I remember Minister in Antigua asking me, well, how y'all do it? Without deputy? Laughing. Literally laughing at what was happening to us. Our neighboring islands, they were basically using us as an instrument of laughter, Mr. Speaker. Even when in 1987, Sir John George Melvin Compton won by a one-seat majority. He won by a one-seat majority in back-to-back elections, Mr. Speaker. He never for once ran this chamber without a deputy. He never did. He appointed a deputy speaker, but no, not this current leader of the opposition. His first excuse, you will remember, Mr. Speaker, that it was not yet convenient. He later clothed himself with another excuse, that the appointment of the deputy speaker is the responsibility of the entire chamber, basically pointing fingers of blame at the opposition then. So, Mr. Speaker, the trend of disrespect to our constitution and to our parliament by this man is on record. And when this government, for fear that another character like that member emerges from the cracks of nowhere, Mr. Speaker, the government sought a constitutional amendment so it can never ever happen again. But what did the leader of the opposition do, Mr. Speaker? He cried foul. Rather than saying that we are basically fixing an ill, he cries foul and says that we are creating an opportunity for a job for the boys, not reflecting on the fact that for 5 years, Mr. Speaker, he convened Parliament without a deputy. But Mr. Speaker, what the leader of the opposition did not realize, you know, and they say colloquially, tout bouché, was that the government was blocking all holes to prevent a recurrence of what had happened, a recurrence of a blatant disregard to such a constitutional provision that has been entrenched and has been adhered to from ever since we convened Parliament, Mr. Speaker. And this was done to ensure that no other leader that comes from wherever they come from would take our laws for what we colloquially refer to as papi show. Mr. Speaker, the situation with the deputy speaker became so dire that the first speaker overtly clamored out for a deputy. She even took to social media for a deputy, Mr. Speaker. And in an interview she said, and I quote, "Not only is a deputy essential," she said she was a wife, she was a mother, and how could she function without a deputy? Mr. Speaker, on many occasions, the House had to be suspended in the middle of various presentations because nature had called. Look, you, Mr. Speaker, your deputy slips into this chair in a very inconspicuous manner. Sometimes my head is down. By the time I lift my head and I say, Mr. Speaker, I need to correct myself and say, Mr. Deputy. So that is the smoothness with which this Parliament operates right now, Mr. Speaker. When the first speaker in Leon Theodore could have taken, and she could have taken no more, she had to quit, Mr. Speaker. But what I want to remind this House is what she went through. Yes, what she went through before she left the chair of the Speaker. Let's take a listen, Mr. Speaker.
It is written in the Constitution that the responsibility to appoint a Deputy Speaker of the House.
The debate over the appointment of Deputy Speaker began in August 2016 when Sarah Flood-Moore resigned the position to become a minister in the then 2-month-old Alan Chasney administration. The former Prime Minister refused to allow the government side to elect a deputy, contending it was the duty of the entire Parliament. This move was at odds. Questions arose over its constitutionality, leading Francois to test the merits in the courts in a case against the office of the Speaker of the House. The island was without a deputy speaker for 5 years until the SLP was voted into office in the summer of 2021, with Micoud North MP Jeremiah Norbert now in the post.
I really want to ask the Speaker the question that everybody wants to know.
It certainly is.
Do you need a deputy?
Most certainly.
You said most certainly. Why is that? What makes you say that you require a deputy?
Apart from saying, according to Sparrow, the famous deputy is essential. Well, the Constitution Order of St. Lucia provides for a deputy at section 36. That's number one. This is mirrored or repeated in Standing Order number 3 of the Standing Orders of the House of Assembly. So there is the need for a deputy. I am human. I am a wife. I am a mother. God forbid that there is an emergency or I've taken ill and the house sitting has been set for a particular day. Does that mean that the business of the House will not, it has to be postponed?
At your convenience.
At my convenience. Well, that is what is happening right now.
In New York, in the fiscal year 2016-2017, recurrent expenditure was $1 million.
Honorable member, please bear with me for a minute.
Point of order. Where's the point of order?
Yeah. I'm very, very sorry to my colleague, but can I just ask for the House to take a 5-minute recess, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Thank you.
Honorable members, the question is that the House do stand suspended for 5 minutes. As many as of that opinion say aye, as many as of a contrary opinion say no. This House do stand suspended for 5 minutes.
All right.
Have been listening to the continuation of the debate on the 2017-2018 estimates of revenue and expenditure. Just before the House went to break, you were listening to the voice of the Honourable Member for Laborie, Honourable Alva Baptist. And in the middle of his presentation, the Prime Minister stood to ask for a 5-minute break. So that will take us up to 10 minutes past 10 when the member for Laborie will continue his presentation.
It's like a bull in a china shop, Shastney was. Mashing up everything, lost everything.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That basically shows, Mr. Speaker, what happened in this chamber without a deputy for 5 years. 5 years, you blatantly disregarded a constitutional provision. You made a mockery of it. You started by convening Parliament way in excess of 30 days as mandated by the Constitution. You went on. You ran the country for 5 years without a deputy speaker. So breaking laws, Mr. Speaker, is nothing new. Those blatant assaults on our laws need to be addressed, and it continues up to now. No one, Mr. Speaker, no one can do as he or she pleases and believe they can operate with total impunity, Mr. Speaker. When the United Workers' Party won the elections in 2016, it was the first time we had an extravagant swearing-in ceremony outside the city circuits, where it was in Vieux Fort, with each minister have a hotel room. You know? Can you believe this, Mr. Speaker? That normally happened within the confines of this chamber, government house, or the Prime Minister's official residence. But no, not with this man. It was the very first time Parliament convened in excess of 30 days. And it was the very first time we were forced to function without a deputy. And let us hope, Mr. Speaker, that for the sake of good governance of this country of ours, we are never permitted to go back into an era like that, Mr. Speaker. That should never happen again in this country, Mr. Speaker. But before the first speaker had enough, Mr. Speaker, she was always crossing swords with the then Prime Minister, who believed from all accounts that he was king of all he surveyed, Mr. Speaker. He was king of all he surveyed. He complied reluctantly once or twice, but otherwise, Mr. Speaker, he defied both speakers under his watch. After Leon Theodore couldn't take anymore, in came Andy Daniel. And sadly, Mr. Speaker, neither of them, as my colleague said previously, neither of them could have stood up to him because he believed he paid the piper, so he called the tunes. And that's the sad thing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let's take a listen to an 8-second video where Andy Daniel is going, Mr. PM, in a very tiresome voice. Let's take a listen.
And misleading. Just like when the member came.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Very well. But Mr. Speaker, the one that broke the camel's back was when Leon Theodore told the Prime Minister, she was Speaker then, to take a seat. He reluctantly complied, but sadly, she never had the chance to tell him that again. She was out. Let's take a listen to it, Mr. Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I'm very happy for your judgment. I mean, and just for a point of a clarification, if one goes...
No, Prime Minister.
I just wanted to make the point, Madam Speaker, because, it's all a learning issue for all of us. In the standing orders, point...
Prime Minister, please take your seat. Thank you.
And Mr. Speaker, you could leave it that way for a while, Mr. Audley. Those are the kinds of transpirations that occurred within this chamber, Mr. Speaker. When Andy Daniel came here, Mr. Speaker, he asked the former Prime Minister to withdraw a statement. He asked him to withdraw, and he said boldly, I am not withdrawing the statement. Do what you want. Let's take a listen to it, Mr. Speaker.
Right there in front of us, right? That we were misleading the House.
Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Prime Minister. You cannot stand and say you're not going to withdraw a statement.
I'm not going to withdraw it. So you're going to have to take whatever action you want.
You all are hearing this, folks? You want play that again for me, please. Play it again for those who had not seen or heard it. Hear it.
And he said right there in front of us, right, that we were misleading the House.
Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Prime Minister. You cannot stand and say you're not going to withdraw a statement.
I'm not going to withdraw it. So you're going to have to take whatever action you want.
Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker? Can you imagine? This member for Miku South is accustomed of doing as he pleases. And if this is not dictatorial, I don't know what is. What is worse, Mr. Speaker? On this occasion, the then Speaker asked him to withdraw. He boldly said, take whatever action you want. Then Andy Daniel went on and he laced the request as though he was begging, please withdraw. Please withdraw. Let's take a listen to the second request.
But I'm not withdrawing.
Honorable Prime Minister, I'm going to ask you, please, to withdraw the state.
But I'm not withdrawing.
Honorable Prime Minister, I'm going to ask you, please, to withdraw the state.
I'm not.
Y'all are hearing this? Y'all are hearing this, Mr. Speaker? So don't believe the recalcitrant attitude that was shown by the member of Miku North towards you is new ground. It's not new ground. Miku South, sorry. It's not new ground. This is how the man behaves. This is how the man behaves. And what is worse, Mr. Speaker, after that episode, he brought the Speaker into cabinet. He summoned the man into cabinet and scolded him for what he termed as blatant disrespect. And the member for Castries North will bear witness to that. So that is a man who is in the habit of disrespecting people. You were asked to withdraw, humbly withdraw. The Speaker laced it as though he was literally begging you, Mr. Prime Minister, please withdraw. I'm not. And then summon the man to cabinet, probably threaten him, threaten to fire him, put his bread on the line. And Mr. Speaker, that is what you have here in this gentleman from Miku North, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the sad thing is, Leon Theodore, the first speaker that he had,
she had to be literally fighting with the then Prime Minister even to get a chance to speak. Let's take a listen to that.
Prime Minister, can I have a moment, please? Honorable Prime Minister.
Answer them.
Prime Minister, can I have a moment, please? Honorable Prime Minister.
Answer them.
Can I have a moment, please? Honorable Prime Minister.
Answer them.
Prime Minister, can I have a moment, please? Honorable Prime Minister.
Answer them.
So, Mr. Speaker, the situation at hand is not new. It is not new, and it is an extension, like I said previously, of the behavioral pattern of the leader of the opposition. And we have witnessed that kind of behavior over the years, Mr. Speaker. Over the years, we have witnessed it in this chamber, and we continue to witness it for the last 6.5 years that he was made an elected member. We continue to see that kind of conduct in this chamber, Mr. Speaker. Total disregard to the law, total disregard to the rules. Mr. Speaker, you have on a multiplicity of occasions asked me to withdraw statements. I'm sure well in excess of 10 times. And there has been not one occasion, Mr. Speaker, that I have even contemplated refusing to do so. Far less to state I will not do so. I accept your guidance with grace and humility. Even on that unfortunate Friday, Mr. Speaker, the day that became the subject matter of the disciplinary proceedings, upon resumption, from a standpoint of magnanimity, I felt the compunction, Mr. Speaker, to offer an apology even if it was not requested. I felt, Mr. Speaker, that I may, in your view, have behaved in an unparliamentarian manner. Probably I may not have, but it is with that in my mind, Mr. Speaker, I felt I owed you an apology, even if not invoked. But the leader of the opposition is far from that, Mr. Speaker. And I want to place on record my commendation to you, Mr. Speaker, in being a model speaker. I want to commend you for doing what's right, even showing a bit of compassion in so doing. The two speakers that presided in this chamber prior to you, Mr. Speaker, were both appointed by the leader of the opposition. And so he felt he could have disrespected their offices with total impunity. You are cut from a different cloth, Mr. Speaker, and to you I say bravo. I recently saw a clip, Mr. Speaker, of a suspension of a member of parliament from Antigua. Assault is his name, I think. And the speaker was not as tolerant as you. You handled the situation, in my view, extremely well. As it relates to the temporary suspension, I want to say this. The people of Miku South deserve their representative in this chamber. But you see, that right was reconferred upon him, and he has greeted us with his absence only to make a statement. That is the subtle disrespect that is being shown not only to this chamber but to the people of Miku South. At the commencement of the term, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you will remember, and other members will, he had taken it up on his own volition to absent himself on numerous occasions. In fact, I believe there was one time it was nearing the maximum amount of sessions a parliamentarian could have missed. He quickly militated against it and found himself in the House. But we don't want it that way. Even if he's absent, let it be on his own volition and not that of ours. But I want to caution him, Mr. Speaker, as I close, that within all family circles, within every organization, within society itself, there are rules and regulations to which we all must subscribe. No one is above the law. No one can operate with total impunity. And whatsoever he reapeth, whatsoever he soweth, so shall he reapeth. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Castries Southeast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to make just a brief intervention on this motion that is before us. Mr. Speaker, I would like to reference my contribution on the basis of the standing orders, the book that was given to us even during the time when I entered the Senate. And of course, there was a school of thought that indicated that this is not adequate. And there was a time when I believed that the standing orders was inadequate based on the behaviors that I witnessed in Parliament. But I've come to realize that there is a school of thought also that beyond a set of rules to govern behavior, there's what you call character. And I think when we speak of what transpires within this Parliament, there's a lot that have to do with character. Because, Mr. Speaker, as the member for Central Castries goes on the point that there are rules and laws governing every aspect of human interventions and behavior and living. In fact, our very body are governed by certain health laws. And when we do not subscribe to proper health laws, we pay for it. In fact, I can make reference to the scripture in Exodus 21, where if two men were fighting, and Moses had a law that if one of them hit a pregnant woman and she had given birth prematurely, the husband could ask for whatever he wants from them, and they must pay. There were laws in biblical times. And of course, the member for Grosley would agree with me that you can't participate in sports without adhering to laws. You couldn't play cricket without having the umpire to administer, and even the square leg umpire. Of course, you may have some right to appeal to some decisions, but of course, there is a third umpire that will govern on that decision. There are laws. What is troubling to me, Mr. Speaker, is that we expect sports people, the men on the field, to accept the red card when the referee issue a red card on the field and to walk out and be civilized about and understand the sports. We expect that even when a cricketer is actually placed out by the umpire and he feels that he is treated unfairly, we expect these sports people to behave well and subscribe to the rules of the games. But in the highest room of the land, in a parliament, because you are not totally happy, you can lash out insults. Mr. Speaker, I believe for some things that this is inadequate. Because there are quite a bit that is said below the mic that is not captured. And sometimes I'm asking myself, are you hearing? But persons would go out into the media and give a different look up to how things are. So for example, the member from Mikud South could say to me under the mic that if he sees me in a church, he will run. But he goes to the media and cry. But he doesn't know how my children cried when I shared with them what he said. This is about character. This doesn't answer everything. You see, if we do not embark on the right conversation, if we do not lace a discussion, it doesn't matter our gains in GDP and other fiscal indicators showing well, we will not go very far, Mr. Speaker. And I believe that the public expects us to conduct ourselves and to have a conversation that ties in with the progress that we are making in other aspects of our development. Mr. Speaker, I've heard the term non-entity, and it hit me to the core, because it was the person who was referred to as a non-entity is a daughter of a recognized business person. But what's about this son of an employee of Castries City Council, my father, and a mother, a domestic worker who sold coals, and who I had to carry people's laundry on my head to my home to wash? What am I? I'm below a non-entity if this person was a non-entity. Mr. Speaker, recently there I heard persons referred to as SUSEs. SUSEs, voters. Mr. Speaker, as it relates to these terms, SUSEs, you know, one word, also tell people, look your mother man, no mamau. That was used by politicians. A cabinet of criminals, jackass, mendicant, and even implied that some single mothers are really giving birth to criminals. These things have been allowed, and sometimes we laugh. But there is character associated with this thing. And I take personal, especially personally, when I heard the term SUSE being used. Why? Our people did not invent politics as it is today. We were given this system to govern, and we participate in it. We vote. Some people choose to change where they vote for one reason or the other. But here's a politician who was given free terms. He has secured what I call social insurance, because he'll get a pension for the rest of his life. He has received gratuities or whatever it is. Well, the one who called the person to say had 3. Right? 3 terms. He has a pension for life. The people who voted for him to give him free terms had nothing. But as they tried to get free 5 sheets of plywood from a PAL rep who is now in power, they are called SUSEs. People do not owe me a vote. People have a right to vote where they want to. This character thing is it's very important in the discussion of development, Mr. Speaker. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the hypocrisy associated with representation must come to naught. Our yea must be yea and our nay must be nay. You cannot cry and say you're concerned about the people. You cannot issue pleasantries of accept my sympathy to me, but below the mic you're going to tell me that if you see me in a church, you're going to run. And you know it's hurtful. You will not say it in the mic. You will not say it in the media. But then you will march today about democracy. Mr. Speaker, I've come to realize and appreciate that even my grief and my sadness is more comforting than pleasantries from hypocrites. And some people ask me why I'm sad. Because it provides more comfort than some persons who offer pleasantries in public. Mr. Speaker, when I lost the election in 2016, I was happier than when I won this time because the situation was different. I am blessed even today that the Prime Minister and Leader of Opposition then placed me in the Senate. With 3,169 votes I lost, I had a spirit. My head was up high. I felt I was a champion. And to add it, he made me leader in the Senate. What more? I was the happiest person. This time I won, I got more votes. But I suffered based on what transpired, and everybody knew what happened during this election. You lost everything.
Remember, I share your grief, but there is a motion before you, right?
Yes, I'm speaking to this motion, I'm coming to it. And this is why I'm making the point, Mr. Speaker. As you go through this, in this very house, while you are grieving, the member from Mikud, under the mic, the last time the Prime Minister had to tell him, that you telling the man? That you telling the man? I never responded because I vow very early after I was made a senator and the Prime Minister agreed with me. I said to the other younger parliamentarians, when we come in this house, let us not do like what the former parliamentarians going after senior politicians like the member for Mikud South and for Beaufort South. Leave these individuals, the Prime Minister, to other Prime Ministers. I was expecting to come in the House and to benefit from the exchanges between 4 Prime Ministers in this Parliament. Not that a former Prime Minister without I've never said nothing to him, under the mic attacking me. But the standing orders allow him to do that. So is this inadequate? Shouldn't the standing orders have persons not introducing a politician as me number mouth? Shouldn't the standing orders deal with calling people suse, voters, sons and daughters? Shouldn't the standing orders deal with referring to somebody as a non-entity? But I'll say this, Mr. Speaker, as I take my seat. I've said to persons who have served, even last week, a young lady I approved 8 sheets of plywood to, a single mother of 4. And Mr. Speaker, I had to take the courage and say to you, when you walk through the streets of Castries as you leave my office waterfront, I want you to keep your head up high. Because there are some people who have a lot more than you, but they had a different start than we had. And I said to her, because I remember the term non-entity and I know where I come from. And I said to her, this is from taxpayers. This is from the government of St. Lucia. This is not from my pocket. Live here and feel good. And any one of them you meet in the street of Castries that are of a certain complexion or that have money or their own businesses, make sure you don't bow. Keep your head up high and walk well. And I told Nashi that, yes, on last week. I had to tell her that because I feel that in this parliament, the same subtle attitude that some of us ought not to be here, some of us do not belong here, I experience it even in this parliament. It is not in the mic. You do not get it in the mic. It is subtle. And that deception goes into the media for the rest of St. Lucians. And the same people who parade the streets this morning are the ones that have been called suses. Because if any one of them come and receive 8 sheets of plywood from me, the very people who want to lead them and represent them are being called suses. I do hope that, Mr. Speaker, as we continue in this parliament, that we will find the courage and will find the wherewithal to even look at our standing orders. I personally believe that I should not be referred to as a criminal because the member for Mikud South have an issue with a land transaction. I personally believe that an apology is adequate and a withdrawal of that statement is adequate. For him to have gone to the courts and used the means of the court, again I see the principle of the lack of social justice as the court has taken a position. In real social justice, he stands high, and to whom much is given, much is expected. And to ask of an apology is very little in that regard. And for the court to have suggested, I will abide by the principles of the court and I will be guided by the leader of government business. But I think the position of an apology or withdrawal of the statement is very little. Mr. Speaker, I've done wrong and I would stand any day and withdraw a statement made that's inappropriate. And I've seen other members of this side do it. And there are times it's not even called for. Even the Prime Minister, who sits above all of us, has sometimes says, if I'm wrong, I'm prepared to take it in when he's making his contribution. That humility is being trampled on. That humility is not being appreciated on this side. As a matter of fact, what is happening is that the member from Mikud is using the situation by he being alone, and he's compensating by doing insults, and therefore it's easier to be accepted. So then it will appear that he's alone. So because he's one person, he's compensating by doing this to have his way. This is what is at stake at this point in time. The member is not serious about being in the parliament. The member is not serious about anything, because if he was that serious, he would not just send me flowers and then come and laugh at my hurt in parliament under the mic, or send pleasantries. That's hurtful. That is hurtful.
Member for Dennery North.
Mr. Speaker, I rise belatedly to add my voice to the debate on the motion that has been presented by the leader of government business, member for Castries South, and minister responsible for tourism, etc. Mr. Speaker, on a day like today, given all the theatrics, the commotion and the misguided enthusiasm we see, Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, I rise belatedly to add my voice to the debate on the motion presented by the member for Castries South and leader of government business and minister for tourism, investment, etc. And on a day, Mr. Speaker, like today, given all the theatrics, the commotion, and the misguided enthusiasm we see being displayed on the outside, and on a day, Mr. Speaker, what the member for Castries East and Prime Minister in a previous parliamentary disposition would have referred to as flashing mirrors. Amidst all of that, Mr. Speaker, I am once again reminded of the mandate given to me by the people of Dennery North, who after the general elections of 2011, 2016 and 2021, Mr. Speaker, they've sent me to the Parliament to represent their interests. Mr. Speaker, they've mandated me to come into this chamber and to occupy one of the 17 seats reserved for elected parliamentarians. But they've also sent other people, Mr. Speaker, to this chamber to occupy the gallery, as we saw earlier this morning. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity given to me by the people of Dennery North. Mr. Speaker, the matter that is before the House today, as simple as it is, the importance cannot be overstated. Mr. Speaker, the Parliament is the highest decision-making body of a country. This is where we make laws. This is where we enact legislation. This is where we approve budgets, Mr. Speaker. And this is where policies of governments translate into legislation. And so, Mr. Speaker, the business of this House is something we must take seriously. And above all, Mr. Speaker, the conduct and the disposition of members in this chamber is something that we have to watch and watch very closely. Mr. Speaker, our actions, our conduct, our decorum, Mr. Speaker, must be exemplary at all times. And I will be the first to admit that we have all, Mr. Speaker, on occasions gotten carried away by our own exuberance in the things that we say, Mr. Speaker. We get carried away from time to time. And all of us at some point, Mr. Speaker, have made pronouncements in here where we've been called upon to withdraw. And we have. I remember my time in opposition. I referred to a particular member on the government side as a political hitman. And notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, that this was a figurative expression, it was deemed inappropriate, Mr. Speaker. The member took offense, he felt slighted, and I was called upon by the Speaker at the time to withdraw. And without hesitation, Mr. Speaker, given consideration to how the member felt, I was very quick to withdraw the statement that I had made. So, Mr. Speaker, when the member for Miku South today is being asked to withdraw statements he would have made, statements that were injurious to all of us on this side, and is called upon to withdraw, Mr. Speaker, the member should have, in the spirit of true parliamentary democracy, withdrew the statement. He should have withdrawn, Mr. Speaker, and allowed the business of the House to continue. But today, Mr. Speaker, what we have seen is that this particular parliamentary infraction has triggered court action. It has generated a lot of debate in the public space, Mr. Speaker, and it does not in any way whatsoever portray our parliament in a light that it ought to be portrayed. Mr. Speaker, I believe there are consequences to behavior. There must be consequences to behavior. Irrespective of what level in the society you operate, you must be held to account for your actions. And in our case, Mr. Speaker, we have to be held to account for the things we say in this chamber. I cannot, as a Minister of Education, encourage principals and school administrators to enforce school rules and to say to children that when you break school rules or you infringe the rules that are established by your teachers and your principals, that you will be punished or you will be admonished. And then we come into the parliament where the country is supposed to take example, Mr. Speaker, and when we infringe or we violate the standing orders, we have a difficulty, Mr. Speaker, to admit that we have been wrong and that we can withdraw and we can show remorse for what we do. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe, as I said, in the power of example. And if the children who watch us on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, are to derive any meaningful example that can serve them well in the future from the proceedings of Parliament, I believe, Mr. Speaker, we have to ensure, and it doesn't matter who gets offended in the process, we have to ensure that the standing orders are upheld, the standing orders are defended, and that the legacy of the Parliament that we happen to constitute today will be one that the next generation will be proud of. Mr. Speaker, I support the reinstatement of the member for Mikud South. The member from Mikud South comes here like any one of us and he postures, Mr. Speaker, as we can, and it's our right to do in the chamber. But we must never forget or lose sight of the fact that when we come into this parliament, we did not come in here because we went through an examination process or we attended interviews and somebody handed a seat to us in the parliament. We went through the electoral process and people in the majority in the respective constituencies reposed their confidence in us, and that is how we were able to take a seat in this house. So this is not about him, Mr. Speaker. The reinstatement is not even about how he feels and his sentiments, but the people of Miku South, who rightfully deserve a voice in the parliament, should not, Mr. Speaker, be punished because of the actions of their representative. And so I support the reinstatement of the member. And the member for Castries South, Mr. Speaker, put it across beautifully this morning. There's a lot that he has to answer to, and he can't answer from the outside. He needs to be in here. so that he can be part of a spirited debate at every sitting that can allow us to distill and to ventilate the issues of state that are of concern to the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, the member needs to apologize, notwithstanding whether the motion is upheld in the majority and that he can rightfully take his place in here. But I think out of humility, Mr. Speaker, the member needs to come in here and make the admission that, look, I erred, I was wrong on reflection, and I need to withdraw the statement that I made, which was deemed offensive to members on the governing side. Mr. Speaker, ours is a parliament that people speak about in very glowing terms across the region. And you have demonstrated, notwithstanding the barrage of criticism that has come your way, Mr. Speaker, but you have demonstrated that in the Caribbean, you are one of the most celebrated presiding officers in the parliamentary process. So, Mr. Speaker, with that, I conclude my very brief presentation, and as I said, it is my sincere hope that the member for Micoud South will find it in him, Mr. Speaker, to withdraw the statement, apologize, and allow the business of the Parliament to proceed. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Podium. I didn't really want to.
A member for Vieux-Fort North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion which was presented by the member for Castries South. But, Mr. Speaker, I wish to also make some very brief comments on the motion. The debate today, Mr. Speaker, is about the member for Micoud South's behavior when he refused to withdraw a statement and he refused to apologize. While this, Mr. Speaker, seemed very simple and very run-of-the-mill, it has caused this House to sit for a number of hours to debate this very behavior of the member for Micoud South. It is important, Mr. Speaker. Many people, many commentators will say, why do we spend so much time to debate such a motion when the member is not even in the House? He does not seem to care. He laughs at us. He laughs at everything that happens in the House. And so why should we debate this motion? It is very important, Mr. Speaker, because how can we purport to be dealing with issues of the people of St. Lucia if we do not have order in this House, Mr. Speaker? How can we do so? The member for Micoud South simply refuses to respect the rules of this House. And it is not only in this Parliament. The records will show and the evidence will show, Mr. Speaker, that the member simply refuses to respect this House. This debate goes to the heart of the behavior of the member for Micoud South over the last few years. Over and over, Mr. Speaker, he has demonstrated that not only he refuses to respect the procedures of this House, but he disregards all things St. Lucian, period. Mr. Speaker, he does not care about things St. Lucian. He does not care about the Speaker, or he does not care about the authority of the Speaker or the authority of this House. Mr. Speaker, this debate points to something else. This debate points to the very heart of the member for Miku South, the behavior of the member for Miku South. It points to the way he wants to make us feel. That is what it's about. This debate points to the way the member for Miku South wants us to continue to feel. When he refuses to apologize, or he refuses to say, I withdraw, these words are not simple, Mr. Speaker. This behavior is not surface. What he is really trying to do is to say to members of this house that you are not worthy. You are not worthy to be in this house. You are not worthy to pass judgment on me. You are not worthy to tell me that I should not pay attention to the rules of this house. And that is what this is all about. He wants you, Mr. Speaker, to feel that you are not qualified to rule over him in the parliament. He wants us, members of this house, to feel, who are we to be in government? Who are we to tell the mighty leader of the opposition what to do and what to say? Who are we, member for Miku North, the little young one from Miku North, the one from Denry South, who was a forester, the member for Castries North, who made him run, the member for Soufre, whom they call Auntie, and they called her all sorts of names. When he turns around and he looks at the member for Ancillary Canneries, and he looks at the member for Castries Central, and he looks at young Grosile member there, and he looks at the lady who make Ezekiel run, and then he looks at the member for Labrie. When he looks around again, he looks at the member for Denry North, and he looks at the member for Castries South, whom he tried to put in prison, and he looks at the leader of the opposition and the Attorney General, whom he did not want to sit there. What do you expect him to do, Mr. Speaker? And then he turns around, he looks at the Prime Minister, whom he said could never ever be Prime Minister of St. Lucia, over his dead body. When he looks at you, Mr. Speaker, a man of the soil, a man whom he never believes he could have respect for, what do you expect? This member for Miku South does not believe that any one of us, far less you, Mr. Speaker, can tell him what to do in this honorable house. That is what this behavior is all about. That is what this behavior is all about. Who are we, little boys and girls, who come from the depths and the bellies of the communities in St. Lucia, to tell him what to do? And that is what this is all about, Mr. Speaker. It's not about him challenging. Do you understand, Mr. Speaker, that this gentleman challenged the very authority of the standing orders of this house? The same standing orders that he used when he was Prime Minister. Today he goes to court to challenge the very standing orders. He did not do it because he believes there is something wrong with it. And let's see what happens in the court. Because if the court determines that the standing orders of this house are illegal, what do we do then, Mr. Speaker? Do we go back to all of the rulings of this house? I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but you guide me on this. And if the standing orders are illegal, what about all the rulings that happened when he was Prime Minister? What happens with those? But because today he's asked to withdraw, he goes to the courts. Because who are we, little boys and girls in this house, to determine that he must say, I withdraw? That is what this is all about, Mr. Speaker. I'm coming there. Navini. That is what this is all about. So the motion to allow him to come back to this house, I support that fully. We never intended, Mr. Speaker, for any member of this house to be out of this house. But you must stand up, Mr. Speaker. This member for Miku South follows no laws. He believes that he can do whatever he wants. He did whatever he wanted in the last government. And as a result of his claim of democracy being trampled, outside of the house today is a perfect example of what democracy is all about, Mr. Speaker. Perfect example. When he was the Prime Minister, there was tape all around, cordon, the Parliament, the precincts of the Parliament. All of these areas were cordoned off. All right? We could not, supporters could not walk in. If you had a red shirt in certain circumstances, you could not walk in certain places in this country.
because he felt, Mr. Speaker, that he was the boss and mighty of all the lands in this country. But today he comes to the house, refuses, when he looks around the table and he sees St. Lucia in its full bloom and glory, people representing people, he cannot take it, Mr. Speaker. So he has to disrespect and walk off and do all those kinds of things. For me, Mr. Speaker, this debate is not really about him. And the member for Denry North said it well. This debate is not really about him. This debate for me is to continue to demonstrate to the people of St. Lucia why the member for Miku South should never, ever, ever become Prime Minister of this country again. This morning, a compromise was met with, came to the house, but immediately he left. So in other words, who are you, little boys and girls, to tell me to come and sit down in the same thing they're demonstrating for, you know. The very same thing they're walking up and down for. He has to be in the house. But he comes and he walks out. So again, it's a demonstration of who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Where are you from? Who are you? So that is the kind of attitude. So it's about how he wants to make members of Parliament feel. Mr. Speaker, don't take it to heart, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues in Parliament, don't take it to heart. What he's trying to do, Mr. Speaker, is to try to break us down, to make us feel as if we are less than what we should be in this house. That is what he's trying to do. And I don't even want to go into all of the utterances of the past. When he called us jackasses, and he said we're backing dogs. All of these things are meant to break you down and to make you feel that you're not worthy. You are not worthy of being inside of here. That is what this motion is about, to me. And they claim that democracy, we are taking democracy away. We are taking democracy away, Mr. Speaker. I recall many times, as others have said, that I have said things in the House and I've had to withdraw. I remember former Speaker Andy Daniel telling me, you have to withdraw this. And I simply said, although I think I'm right, let me withdraw. I remember so many things, but those things don't matter to the member for Miku South because he believes he's of a different ilk. He's of a different ilk. He's not part of this group of people inside of here, Mr. Speaker. That is what, for me, that is what this is all about. And therefore, even when, Mr. Speaker, a compromise has been reached and said, okay, let's come back, member for Miku South, come back in the House, let's have this debate, let's have this motion, and then we'll continue. He says, we are not worthy for him to sit inside of here with us. That is what he's about. And you listen to him, Mr. Speaker. This is not about him apologizing or not about him saying, I withdraw. And I predict that he's going to come back to this house and behave even worse. Even worse. Because as the time rolls on, Mr. Speaker, and the progress and the success of this government begins to bite them, and they begin to realize that they can't find any way out, so they're looking for something to cause a snowballing effect. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So they go on TV and radio and cry tears of crocodile, Armageddon, all kinds of tears. Even currently, crying tears. Crying tears. Crying tears, Mr. Speaker. Because you are asked to withdraw. A simple thing like that. And if a former Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, can't withdraw because he feels that he's above this Parliament, he's above this Parliament, so he will even challenge the standing orders. because he's asked to withdraw. That tells you something about the heart and soul of this person. That tells you something about the heart and soul of this person. So, Mr. Speaker, aujourd'hui, nous venons pour débattre en motion pour dire que même si nous te prenons une décision, qu'il est dans l'opposition, ni pour vier en parlement, mais il pour acide avec écouter ça nous qu'a dit. Mais côté aujourd'hui, mi site là, côté tout jump up et demonstration là yo fait, tout match là yo fait, tout match là yo fait, et na c'est mon match là. La teni yo de moun mais na acheté c'est mon match là. Pour venir assis dans le Parlement, il parle là. Il parle là parce que, pour moi, Mr. Speaker, ce n'est pas apologie à demander pour faire qui est important. Ce n'est pas apologie qui est important. Monsieur Salah toujours quoi, il en haut nous. Qui il en haut nous. Qu'on nous pas supposé en Parlement. Là, il garde au Lyon et qui ouais c'est moun qui est assis dans le Parlement. Il a quoi à dire, c'est moun ça pas qualité. Qui manière c'est moun ça qui est assis dans le Parlement et qui a dit moi ça pour faire. C'est moi qui bosse. C'est ça motion ça about Mr. Speaker. C'est ça motion ça about. Monsieur Mikousa pas ça quoi. Jodi allez regarder mon Parlement Mikounov. Regardez mon Parlement Denry South. Regardez Kassuiznov. Regardez si c'est mon Parlement Soufouye. Qui ont été capables toute qualité blague, des attentes gouan, toute qualité bagaille. Là, regardez mon Parlement en Sluré. Regardez Kassuiznov, Kassuiz Central. Regardez Jean Tinom Sala, qui ont été dit Spider, c'est un gros nom. Les Jean Tinom Sala, mettez web Spider, il mate pied, il oublie cool ball. Les messieurs, regardez ça. Et regardez, mon qui fait Ezekiel Kouya. Regardez Delminov. Qui a été jump up dit tout bagaille, qui laisse Raza tuer whatever. Then il garde Kassuiz South, et qui garde Premier ministre là, il garde Mam Kassuiz Soudis. Là tenir un homme, il a dit, lui qui met, il était assis de côté ici, à mandé ça cite moi. Là, il parlait, il était venu avec un chai livre en Parlement, go 7 livres. Et là, il va au Parlement, il a shift jacket comme ça. Et qui a tourné parce que c'est lui qui était ma pipi. Oui, il t'a mené deux gogouilles avant tout le bail. Là, monsieur t'a parlé, monsieur Speaker. Moun toi, tu as eu respect, gaï ça là, gaï, ma chose qui n'ont été. Et là, monsieur Kassuiz, Mikousa regardé, et qui ouais qui laisse qu'il y a un site là. Et de là, il tourne et regarde le Premier ministre là. Monsieur obligé de troubler. Lui-même qui a dit, c'est qualité, c'est moun ça qui est en Parlement. Moi-même, ça m'a dit pourquoi moi. Il a déjà dit, moi fini. Lui-même, c'est qu'à campagne du Fort Neuf. So, là, il tourne et qui garde moi. Et qui garde toutes ces moun ça, oui. Là, il a dit, moi sortais dans un cave. Moi volais bœuf, tout le débat, il a regardé. But, Mr. Speaker, motion ça là, c'est pas about apology to sell. Et là, il tourne, et qui regarde qui est-ce qui speak Kaila. Un homme CDC, un homme qui est avec tout le monde. Mais c'est pas ça qu'on pense, c'est qualité moun ça qui a conduit, et c'est qualité moun ça qui est en Parlement. So, laisse ça, il a vu fou. Et avec qui j'ai l'audience pour challenge loi en Parlement même. Ça veut dire ça c'est un monde qui a quoi, il trop en haut nous en cette ici. Qui a nous toute qualité non. Dernier bagage là il dit jeune madame c'est un non-entity. Il a nous jackass. Il dit qu'il y a nous backing dogs, nous c'est chiens. Toute qualité bagage monsieur Zakuye nous. Comme ça n'a dit à monsieur Speaker. Motion ça là n'a supporté. Mais pour moi-même motion ça là c'est pas about même Parlement Mikousa. Motion ça c'est about manière il voulait faire nous catcher about quoi nous. Pour succès gouvernement ça a fait. Yo pas ça jeune bail pour yo faire gros bagaille comme ça yo fait un match bail pour yo ouais qui manière yo ka joindre traction. Mais ça pas fait Mr. Speaker. So Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. But I put it to you, Mr. Speaker, that you should not let your heart be troubled. They are trying, the member for Miku South is trying to make this about the Speaker of the House. He's trying to make it about the competence of the Parliament. He's trying to make us believe that we don't deserve to be here. He's trying his best so that we feel differently about ourselves. But Mr. Speaker, I join my colleagues and my Prime Minister to tell you that we feel good about the people of St. Lucia, and we feel good about the work that we're doing for the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. They are not going to derail us. The member for Miku South will not derail us. We are going to continue to take this country to glory with the help of St. Lucians, Mr. Speaker, from all walks of life. No one is a non-entity in this country, Mr. Speaker. And that's how he's trying to make us feel. We don't feel that way, Mr. Speaker. We are confident. We are confident in our people, and we are confident in the men and women of this government who form the cabinet and who are in this parliament, Mr. Speaker. We are confident about the choices which the people of St. Lucia made on the 26th of July. And very soon, Mr. Speaker, we are going to celebrate 2 years. 2 years. 2 years, Mr. Speaker. And when you compare the performance of our Prime Minister to the performance of the member for Miku South, Mr. Speaker, no comparison. So he's trying to challenge the standing orders of the House. He's trying to challenge the standing orders of the House. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion, but he's not going to derail us. And he's never going to make us feel less than we know we are. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Castries East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what we are debating here on the surface, Mr. Speaker, may seem to be a debate about the member for Miku South. It may seem, Mr. Speaker, to the regular observer to be a debate about the member for Miku South. It may even seem to some opportunists that's a debate about democracy. It may even seem, Mr. Speaker, that it's a debate about freedom. It may even seem, Mr. Speaker, it's a debate about a personal grudge of members in this honorable House. On the surface, Mr. Speaker, that's what it may look like. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I want to compliment the member for Castries South for raising the motion. Because, Mr. Speaker, we in this honorable House, all of us have a conscience, all of us have our lives, and all of us have a purpose for existing in this world, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what is happening in this House, Mr. Speaker, is a deep philosophical and ideological event that will mirror itself long in the history of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Sir John Compton, I had the privilege of sitting with him in this honorable House in opposition. I also followed him when I was out of this House, Mr. Speaker. And I heard Sir John Compton say to the Speaker, I withdraw. I heard him say that several times. I heard George Mallet say to the Speaker several times, I withdraw. I heard Alan Bousquet, in his own style, say to the Speaker several times, I withdraw. I heard Kenny Anthony, who is in this House for the longest, he and I and the member for Beaufort North, we've said several times, I withdraw. Cashews North. Several times, I withdraw, Mr. Speaker. The member for Cashews Central, in the last sitting, he made a public apology and he said to this honorable house, if I may have behaved in a fashion that I should not have behaved, I withdraw. You know why, Mr. Speaker? Because we do not believe that we are greater mortals than the other people in this honorable house or the people in St. Lucia. We do not believe, Mr. Speaker, that we have a divine right to be in a particular position in this country. We do not believe that because of who we think we are, that we must dictate what happens in this country, Mr. Speaker. We respect democracy, and we respect the rule of law, and we respect the standing orders of this honorable house, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what's happening here today is significant. And I want the young people in this country to listen carefully, Mr. Speaker. Do not take it as a political charade with people on the streets. What's happening here, Mr. Speaker, is because there is a fundamental dissatisfaction with the will of the people of this country. The people of this country went to the polls and they voted the St. Lucia Labour Party into government 15 seats to 2. That is the will of the people. That is democracy. That is the will of the people, Mr. Speaker. But what you hear of the complaints? Oh, it's only me here. It's only me here. Only me here. Mr. Speaker, you use only you here. The only reason why the member for Mico South is here, because the people of St. Lucia wanted him to be here. It is not the first time that there is one member here. Honorable Louis George was here, Mr. Speaker. I heard him say, I withdraw. He said, I withdraw, Mr. Speaker. But no, the member for Mico South, it's only me here. It's only me here, Mr. Speaker. If you did not do your job, if you do not make a mess of this country, if you do not take John Compton's party and make it a point where he lost his own seat, you would not be here alone. You are here because of your own fault. And you are here because the people of St. Lucia put you there, Mr. Speaker. So what you have to do is sit down there and wheel and come back again. But no, he will not do that. He will not do that, Mr. Speaker, because he believes, and the people who are following him, Mr. Speaker, his surrogates, for their own personal reasons. People who hate themselves, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's a phenomenon called self-hate, where you hate yourself because of who you are. You do not have the confidence in yourself or the confidence in your colleagues to believe that they can be prime minister, or they can be minister, or they can take a position in this country, but you hate yourself. So in hating yourself, Mr. Speaker, you hate your fellow man. It's a deep philosophical problem, Mr. Speaker. It's very deep. It's something that hurts me every day when I listen to certain people. When I read what they write, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I carry no animosity. In fact, I was saying to somebody last week, I actually feel sorry for them. I really feel sorry, because if you can support a man who comes in his honorable house, who is asked to withdraw a statement, and he doesn't withdraw it, and he says it's about democracy, and you support that, Mr. Speaker, I really feel sorry for you, Mr. Speaker. I feel sorry for you, because it's a pattern of behavior. The member for Mico South, it's a pattern of behavior, Mr. Speaker. The member for Mico South sat here when he was here and said to the Speaker, do what you want, I'm not doing it. And you make an excuse for that. Do what you want, I'm not withdrawing. And you find an excuse for that and talk about democracy. The member from Mico South sat in this honorable house and said to the then lady speaker, I'm not doing it. I'm not. The member from Miku South left the lady speaker without a deputy speaker. The poor lady had to leave her in a stretcher. She sat there for hours, Mr. Speaker, because the member from Miku South did not have the understanding, the decency or the compassion and the fortitude to say to one of his members, you must be deputy speaker. I said so to one of my members. He may not have been pleased, but I said so to him because I believe in the discipline and the principle and following the constitution of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And I must thank him for agreeing. I must thank him for agreeing, Mr. Speaker. Because when you join the St. Lucia Labour Party, you join a party of principle, a party of ideology, a party that stands for something. And that is why they can't understand that the mess they left this country in, we could experience 18% economic growth in less than 2 years. So that is what that's all about. That is what that charade is all about. It's a distraction. It's a distraction. It's to take you away from where the country is going. It's a distraction because remember they said we could never run this country. We could never run it. We wouldn't be able to pay civil servants. We wouldn't do this, we wouldn't do that. Tourists won't come. The country is a mess, Mr. Speaker. And they have seen that we are running this country, the men and women, with the help of the civil service, we are running this country in a way that they have never run it before and will never run it again, Mr. Speaker. And that's the difference. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is deeper than it seems. This motion is not about the cost of land in Banan. Not about the cost of land, Mr. Speaker. Who valued the land? Who valued the estate lands? If we're talking about selling land, valuing land, Mr. Speaker, who valued the estate lands? Where was the valuation for the DSH lands? Where's the valuation? Where is the valuation for the lands at Cap Estate? Where is the valuation for the lands at Shock? Where's the valuation? Where's the valuation for the lands at Forestier? If you talk about valuation, if it's such a grievous harm that you talk about valuation, where is the valuation for these lands, Mr. Speaker? Who valued the agricultural situation in Vieux-Fort at Bon Séjour? Who valued it? Where's the valuation for it? Where is the valuation? If you talk about valuing lands, so your democracy is threatened because of value of land, Mr. Speaker? But Mr. Speaker, again, it is deeper than that. Remember, Mr. Speaker, when there was a call for demonstration by the Labour Party, we were advised to go and demonstrate in Masha. You remember? We were advised, when they want to go and demonstrate in Masha, Mr. Speaker, and they want to win seat in Masha. You said to people, go and demonstrate in Masha. And when there was jazz, you said the people of St. Lucia should not go to jazz in Masha because Masha wasn't safe. But I lived the day to see when there was the opening of jazz in Masha and there was not one incident. And now they want to return, Mr. Speaker. So yesterday they in a rum shop somewhere in Masha, 4 or 5 people giving them ban, tell them come and demonstrate. That's what happened yesterday in Masha, Mr. Speaker. What happened yesterday? The same people that you told, go and demonstrate in Masha, you want to tell them come here? Mr. Speaker, this motion is deeper than what we are reading today. It's deeper, Mr. Speaker, because there is a feeling in this country that the people made a mistake. by a few people. They cannot believe that this big, bad member who was representing Castries Southeast is now outside. Can I believe it? It was impossible. They sat there and they laughed. Ha ha ha! They sat there and they made fools out of us, tried to make fools out of us, Mr. Speaker. They could not believe that the member for Castries Southeast, the one that was there the last time, that he's out. They can't believe it. They can't believe, Mr. Speaker. And the one from Gozile, who wants to call people's names, they could not believe that he would be out and he would be beaten by the honorable member for Gozile now, Mr. Speaker. So it's deeper than that. It's deeper, Mr. Speaker. They could not believe that the member for the late Sir John Compton's constituency, Miku North, when I started politics, Mr. Speaker, you couldn't even pass in Miku North, you know. You could not pass there. When I was in politics, little boy Julian Hunt, when we was talking about Miku North, his head straight, you know. Head straight. You couldn't pass in Miku North.
You lose your deposit.
I remember, Mr. Speaker, there was a funny, Mr. Speaker, when I read my book, there was a fellow called Civilus Jeffrey. Civilus Jeffrey was a very interesting character. Civilus Jeffrey used to be chosen to run Miku North the day of the election, the day of nomination day. So one day, John Hunt calls and says, Civilus, you forget to go and nominate. That's how we used to do Miku North, you know. Civilus used to forget. And when he come to pick up the $250, he can't get some people to go and vote for him, you know. There's a fellow called Flood, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Huh? We barely get 7 people to nominate Civilus Jeffrey to run Miku North. And under the member for Miku South, we lost Miku North. So I agree with him. I understand him. I understand his pain. I understand why he has to be bitter. I understand why he has to create diversions. I understand why he has to do all kinds of things, Mr. Speaker. But we want him to come and sit down here. And that is why we are tabling this motion for him to come and sit down here. Don't go on Newsspin where you have a host that do not go on the radio, Mr. Speaker, where you have somebody who will pander to you. Don't go to the press where you can tell them what they want and they will not challenge you. Come and sit down here. Come and stay here and debate the budget. Come and stay here and debate the policies of this government. Come and stay and debate what you did in St. Jude. Come and stay and debate the Ivanhoe International Airport. Come and sit here and say the people of this country while you brought the economy to its knees. Come here. Don't go outside and do it. Come inside there. Come here, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we are tabling this motion, to bring the member of Miku South to account for his misdeeds in the Parliament of St. Lucia. Not go on Facebook and hide behind all sorts of pseudonyms, Mr. Speaker. Nobody knows who's on Facebook. They don't have the guts. They don't have the strength, Mr. Speaker, to raise their hands and say, that's what I'm saying. So they hide behind Facebook all kinds of accusations. And the member from Miku South knows all about it, Mr. Speaker. He knows all about it. But he comes here and pretends he's fighting for democracy. Democracy, Mr. Speaker. This morning, I was told that the police said to the member from Miku South that people should not be in the grounds of the Parliament. I was told. That's what I was told, Mr. Speaker. I am Minister for National Security. I could have asked what's happening out there, but I won't. Because I want them to demonstrate. I want them to come out there. When it was in our turn, we could not come out there. We were not allowed to be out there, Mr. Speaker. In our turn, we could not be out there. But they were right on the boundary, on the fringes, they were there. You know what? Because we really and truly believe in democracy. So come there. Bring them out there, Mr. Bring them out there. But you come inside there. Now listen to the disrespect, Mr. Speaker. And I saw old ladies, Mr. Speaker, who can barely walk. Who can barely walk. I feel sorry for them. following him. Been back here. Barely walk. But you know what they want, Mr. Speaker? They were demonstrating for him to be here. We brought him here, and he left here, and he went somewhere else. That is the disrespect and the scorn and the disregard that the member from Mico South has for the people of St. Lucia. You demonstrating to be here. When we bring you here, you walk out and leave the people outside, not even with water. But if they had drink water and mind their business, they wouldn't be there. They allow themselves, Mr. Speaker, to let the whims and fancies and the envy and the jealousy and the hatred of one man to bring them out there, Mr. Speaker. So what's happening now, Mr. Speaker, is more than a motion to bring back the member from Mico South. It's more than a motion, Mr. Speaker. And if you look at the trend, if you look at how it's working out, Mr. Speaker, so the member from Mico South talks, for Kashmir South talks, right away on Facebook, personal attack. So when I'm finished there, personal attack. That's the trend. That's the trend. Personal attack is to make us feel we are inferior beings. Denigrate us, Mr. Speaker. Denigrate us, Mr. Speaker. The member for Kashmir's office, he lost his son, Mr. Speaker. He lost his son. And one would expect that people would have said, okay, that is away. Leave these other politics out. Mr. Speaker, the member from Mico South stayed on a platform and he listened to a defeated candidate say to the member for Southeast Castries, your mourning is over, I'm coming after you now. And he said nothing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you want to see that hatred? A man lost his son. Another member of your party, Mr. Speaker, is on a platform saying that I'm coming after you now because I gave you enough time to grieve. How can you say how much time a man needs to grieve for the loss of his son or his parents, Mr. Speaker? I lost my parents in 6 weeks, I'm still grieving. Now, how much time? You lost yours, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure you're still grieving, Mr. Speaker. He will lose his too. How can you say, because of politics, because of the hatred and the contempt and the scorn that you have for people, you say that I'm giving you enough time to grieve and I'm coming for you? And the member from Mico South sits there and applauds. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is deeper than that. It's deeper, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, never in the politics of St. Lucia have we ever attacked each other's children. Never. Never, Mr. Speaker. No member in this parliament in the Labour Party has ever attacked people's children. Never. But for the member from Mico South, nothing is overboard. Nothing is beyond the boundary. Because you know why? Because of hatred, because of contempt, because of scorn for the people of St. Lucia, because they elected him out. That's what's happening, Mr. Speaker. That's what's happening. So this is what this motion is all about. This motion is not about the member getting vexed with you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I want to compliment you. Even though you nearly time sit down the other day, I get vexed with you. Oh, he told me sit down. CDP allocation. Mr. Speaker, you see, Mr. Speaker, because I believe that if it's one thing about you, you read your standing orders and you run this honorable house how it ought to be run, Mr. Speaker. And I want to compliment you for that. Mr. Speaker, you preserve the rights of the minority. I've heard you tell the member for Kashmir Central several times, don't go there. And he stops. Several times, Mr. Speaker. No one can say you bias. One day, Mr. Speaker, the member for Answer Canaries was late and you lock him out. because he came in after the Governor General. You locked him out. Told him he couldn't enter, so he had to sit downstairs. He didn't get vexed. He didn't quarrel, Mr. Speaker. He did not get vexed. Mr. Speaker, I have seen this honorable house, and I wasn't here, I was not in this room. Sinclair Daniel, God bless his soul, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition, Julian R. Hunt at the time, there was a vote for the budget, and the noes had it. So that means the budget could not have passed. The Speaker at that point, he said, let us get a recess. Because the budget, Mr. Speaker, you know, when there are people out there playing, they are historians and you know history. I know it too, you know. I know it too. But history is only seen in certain people's eyes. The Speaker said to the leader of the opposition, I make the rules in this house, and I say I didn't hear the no's. And everybody came back, sit down, and the budget passed. And he put a question again, and the budget passed. That's what happened here, Mr. Speaker. Nobody disrespected him. Julian Hunt sat there and took it. Nobody disrespected him. I sat here, a lady was here, Speaker, and I was across there, and all the rest of my colleagues walked out. And I said to her, Madam Speaker, why are you doing that? She disregarded me. I stood up and I made my case and I walked out after. I didn't disrespect her. I didn't go to the press and condemn her. I didn't do that, Mr. Speaker, because in this honorable house it's a privilege to be here, Mr. Speaker. And that is why there are some people who will never be here. So they come and they sit here with a jacket and no hair. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion, Mr. Speaker, is not only about an apology, Mr. Speaker. If the member for Mico South, if he had any respect for his colleagues, if he had any respect for the standing orders that Sir John Compton sat on in Parliament for over 45 years, if he had any respect for the history, for the contribution that Sir John Compton made to the Parliament of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, he would not try to challenge the standing orders. You will tell me, Mr. Speaker, it would be very simple, so simple, for the member of Mico South to say, Mr. Speaker, I made a mistake, I apologize. 3 words, I apologize. Very simple. Very simple, Mr. Speaker, but no, not him. Who are we? Who are we to tell him, this big fella, to apologize, Mr. Speaker? So no, he talk about democracy. Mr. Speaker, the member of Mico South talking about democracy? Mr. Speaker, I tell you something. I have not yet revealed what I found in government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, there were people being paid by the government, not the police, to record talk shows. And record the talk shows, record what was said, not the police, not police. And these reports were sent to the member from Mico South every morning. Mr. Speaker, you know, and the only reason why we have all these diversions now, and all these, because you know, we are coming close to the thing. The reports are coming out. The reports are going to be tabled. You know, we're getting close, so people are getting jittery. We're beginning to know about the accounts in Panama. So everybody is jittery. So that's why we have these motions. Because everybody is jittery, Mr. Speaker. Everybody is jittery. Because what they thought that we would have behaved like a bunch of reckless, hot around the heels, and just go ahead and make accusations and do this and do that. But no, everything we said, we wanted to prove it, Mr. Speaker. So right now, Mr. Speaker, right now, I made a simple statement. I said that the Roseau Dam had not been completed. Very simple. 4 words. I said nothing else. Nothing else, Mr. Speaker. Long story, Mr. Speaker. But that's not going to put me off, Mr. Speaker. The same way this motion is not going to put me off. Not going to put me off, Mr. Speaker, because I have a purpose. I'm staying the course, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is about creating a distraction from the way the country is running. This motion is about trying to ensure that the youth economy does not function. This motion is trying to ensure that the work we are doing to combat crime doesn't work. This motion, Mr. Speaker, is about creating division and diversion in the country so this government can lose its way and cannot keep focus on the work that has to be done, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, we are not going to be derailed, Mr. Speaker. We are not going to lose focus. Every man and woman in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, has a focus. We have a job to do. We have a job to do, Mr. Speaker, because the people of St. Lucia believed in us. We have a responsibility, Mr. Speaker, and we have to protect them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this motion, Mr. Speaker, when you hear complaints about people saying, protect the victory, Mr. Speaker, is the victory that brought us here? Is the victory that brought us in Parliament? So if we don't protect the victory, how can we come back in Parliament? But you know, Mr. Speaker, they don't want that. They don't want us to protect the victory. They want us to go helter-skelter, go all over the place, Mr. Speaker, so that we can lose our focus and we cannot do the business of the state, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, every young person knows in sports there's an umpire or referee. When you get red carded, you have to leave the pitch. When you get red carded, you have to leave the pitch. You can't even go back and sit down among your colleagues in the dugouts. You have to leave the pitch. You have to go because you get red carded. Locker room for you, lock up. But Mr. Speaker, in sports, Mr. Speaker, have you ever heard anybody get up and tell the referee, I'm not doing that? Have you ever heard anybody, after the second umpire puts you out, tell the umpire, I'm not going out? But that is the example that the member from Mico South is giving to the young people of St. Lucia. That's the example, Mr. Speaker. He and his surrogates, that is the example they are giving to the young people of St. Lucia. That's the example, Mr. Speaker. Have you ever heard, Mr. Speaker? Have you ever heard in any sport, you run 100 meters and the judge tells you that you're out because you kick off before, tell you you're disqualified. You ever see you come and say, I'm not leaving the track? You stand up there? Never happen. And you want to say you're an example to young people? And talk about democracy, Mr. Speaker? And I expect people to listen to the police when they tell them to stop. If you can come in the highest making decision body in the country and behave in this dishonorable way, Mr. Speaker, and talk about democracy. So when the referee put you out, you tell about democracy. Mr. Speaker, and that is what this motion is about. So this motion, Mr. Speaker, has a lot more than is written on this paper, Mr. Speaker. A lot more. And I want the young people of St. Lucia to understand what this is all about. This is not about what it seems to be. Not about it, Mr. Speaker. It's a deep philosophical hatred, a philosophical belief that we are not supposed to be here. It's a belief that only one type of person should be here, Mr. Speaker. And they look for all kinds of excuses. If you say you come from somewhere, they tell you all kinds of things, Mr. Speaker. You must not say where you're from. You must be afraid to say where you're from. You must be afraid to speak about your history. You must be afraid to say where you were born. You must be afraid. If you say it, they say you are racist, Mr. Speaker. You can't say anything. Anything you say, you are racist. But they are the ones who begin the racism. They are the ones who said that the class let them down. They are the ones, but they started. I have never heard in the politics in Lucia. I have never heard the point done from the member from Mico South when he said about Dr. Kenny Anthony that he's a massa. I've never heard him say point, but everybody's afraid of that. Nobody says that. No one says that. We talk about democracy and you, Mr. Speaker, behaving in a fashion. The member from Mico South has said openly to the Speaker, I'm not doing that. But they pretend to forget it. They pretend to forget it, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that your work, you're not God, you're not perfect. All of us, and let's not pretend some of us have different past. All of us have past, all of us have present. All of us. He used without sin cast the first stone, as Sir John said. So let's not pretend that we're so good and we're so holy endowed, and look at that, and he did that, and he did this, and look at me, I'm crying. Let's not pretend, Mr. Speaker, that we better than anybody else, and these guys, and they did me so many things, only me here, and it's not about me, it's not about you and you collecting money. It's not about you. You could do better. I can do better. Not me, of other people. Well, put it in your pocket and fight your own case. It's not about you, but some people calling for the state to pay your bills. Mr. Speaker, we have business to do. Mr. Speaker, I support the motion. The member for Castries South, he laid down the case. The member for Viewfort North and other members who spoke with the Speaker, they laid the grounds why we all should support this motion. I want to encourage my colleagues to support the motion, but I also want to encourage them, do not get derailed. Keep your eye on the prize. Don't get derailed, because the objective is to derail you. The objective is to try to divide you, because no, they said in the beginning that we would have been divided, that no one would accept me, that the member for Castries South would fight with me. That's what they said. You heard so? They said Kenny Anthony would come back. Kenny waiting, Kenny just waiting. That's what they said. So that's what this motion is about. This motion is about saying that Stevenson King would come in this government and do his thing, and King can't stay them fellas. That's what this motion is about. That's what it's about, Mr. Speaker. This motion is not about democracy. It's about trying to derail us. It's about trying to put us off course, Mr. Speaker. It's about trying to hide the 18% economic growth in this country. It's about trying to say that St. Lucia doesn't have the lowest unemployment from the year 2010. The lowest unemployment, both in youth unemployment and otherwise, Mr. Speaker. That's what this motion is about, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support the motion. I thank the member for Castries South for having the courage to come to this parliament and deal with it. And I thank all the members who either in their words or in their actions have supported this motion, Mr. Speaker. Because we want the member from Mico South to come inside here and answer and behave like a man and debate and talk and stand up on points of order and deal with the business of the people of the parliament, not run outside like a little child. They take my toys, Daddy, they take my toys, Daddy, my toys. That's what's happening. Daddy, they take my toys. Come inside and sing like a man and talk and debate and face your colleagues man to man. Be a man. Don't believe that because you're privileged you can do whatever you want. Be a man And those who support him, tell him to be a man. And don't come and just slander people, attack people's children. Slander people's children, Mr. Speaker. Nobody attacks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, the question is that be it resolved, the House of Assembly agrees to the lifting of the suspension without prejudice to the legal action by the member for Mico South against his suspension, and be it further resolved that the lifting of the suspension shall be effective immediately following the passage of this motion, and the member will be at liberty to carry on his duties in service of the House and the constituency of Mico South. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Member from Mico North, members have been advised that the member from Mico North has 2 motions which don't require notice that he'd just like to present to the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to present these motions, or this motion, under section 24, Mr. Speaker, which do not require any notice. No, it does not require any notice. Whereas, Mr. Speaker, on March 7th, 2023, the House of Assembly appointed a special select committee comprising of the Deputy Speaker, myself, Mr. Speaker, as the chair of the committee, the member for Babuno, the member for Soufre, the member for Vieux-Fort, and the member for Choiseul Saltibus as members of the said committee. A quorum being established by the presence of at least 3 members, and that this special select committee inquire into statements made about the member for Castries Central. About the member from Castries Central was mandated to submit his report to the full House on or before June 6, 2023. So, Speaker, be it resolved that the House of Assembly do extend the date of the report to be on or before September 30th, 2023.
Honourable members, the question is that the Select Committee appointed on March 7, 2023 to look into the statements, to inquire into statements made about a member for Castries Central, that the life of this committee be extended, or the report to be prepared to be before, on or before 30th September 2023. The previous life was 6th of June 2023. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Member for Mico North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to present another motion under section 24. Mr. Speaker, it does not require any notice. Whereas on March 7, 2023, the House of Assembly appointed a special select committee, Mr. Speaker, comprising of the Deputy Speaker as the chair of the committee, the member for Babuno, the member for Soufre, for Sejac, the member for Vieux-Fort North, and the member for Choiseul Saltibus as members of the committee. A quorum being established by the presence of at least 3 members, and the special select committee inquired into statement made about the member for Castries South was mandated to submit its report to the full House on or before June 6, 2023. Mr. Speaker, be it resolved that the House of Assembly do extend the date of the report to be on or before September 30th, 2023.
Honourable members, the question is that the House of Assembly do extend the date of the submission of the report by the Special Select Committee to inquire into statements made about the member for Castries South be extended to on or before the 30th September 2023. And now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Member for Castries South.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that this House stands suspended until 3 p.m.
3 p.m.? Honourable members, the question is that this House do stand suspended until 3 p.m. And now put the question, as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting suspended.
All rise.
Well, we've come to the end of the first session of this sitting today by the House of Assembly, which of course took most of the time was spent on the motion by the leader of government business, the member of parliament for Castries South. And that is in relation to the matter of the suspension of the Member of Parliament for Miku South and the Leader of the Opposition. There was quite a bit of debate. Quite a few members presenting on it or contributing to it. And in the end, the motion was taken, and that the member, that is the Member of Parliament for Miku South, will return to the House of Assembly. But of course, bearing in mind too that the matter is before the courts, and so the court will have its say on that matter. Comme on dit en créole, nous venons au bout de ça. Ça c'est la première session, ça c'est il peut continuer, ça c'est pour aujourd'hui. Mais ça qui fait aujourd'hui plutôt c'était pour ni ça c'est pour bail, ça c'est chef opposition avec aussi même parlement pour Sud-Miku, on va Alan Chasney, et peut-être qu'à changer l'idée, ça c'est oui l'idée, mais la dernière décision qui était passée, une motion qui était passée pour suspendre, ça c'est pour participer en dedans de session qui consiste Jictan, il prend apologie avec il prend parole livrée à cette situation, il était parole, il était dit comme que la technique corruption ça c'est regarde un cabinet là, mais motion ça c'est même pas pour Sud Castries, on va Ernest Hillet, docteur Ernest Hillet, il présentait une motion aujourd'hui pour virer quitter même parlement pour Miku, ça c'est avec chef opposition pour virer assise en Kaikonsit avec participer. Malgré quand il dit situation, il devant ça c'est l'audience avec l'audience qui fait jugement. Quand même il passait aujourd'hui. Et quand l'autre bail aussi qui était passé, c'est pour bail la tenir rapport pour bail plus date puisqu'il était pour présenter des rapports à ça qui passait en cas consiste avec contre même parlement pour Sud Castries avec même parlement pour Castries Central Castries en mi-temps ville Castries, mais il y a un temps pour continuer. Eh bien, c'est plutôt ça qui est passé ici aujourd'hui. Avec avant ça, nous avons réfléchi à la vie à M. Winston Springer, comme ça vite passé, avec nous avons parlé avec M. Earl Bousquet. Nous avons pris l'occasion pour remercier M. Earl Bousquet pour parole là, avec tout le temps passé. Puis nous, avec content, nous avons vu ici à 3 heures pour continuer. Et puis, ça qui est passé en cas consiste. Nous avons vu en studio nous à présent. How are you?